Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a winter so cold, so merciless, you probably won't survive it. Seriously, you're a peasant in the Middle Ages, and it's the dead of winter. There's no central heating, no electric blanket, and the only insulation between you and the bitter cold outside is a few inches of wood, wattle, and whatever straw you've stuffed in the gaps. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd also love to know, what city are you watching from and what time is it there? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. It's dusk, and the sun has already surrendered to the grey horizon. You're trudging back to your little wooden hut, boots soaked and stiff, fingers red with the sting of exposure. The sky's been a low leaden sheet for days, pressing the cold down like a smothering weight. Your shoulders ache from the day's labour. Maybe you've been chopping wood or tending to livestock, but the worst part, you know that when you open that crude little door, the chill waiting inside will slap you harder than the wind outside. Welcome home. The interior smells of damp earth, old smoke, and the lingering musk of animals. The air is unmoving, heavy. You stomp your feet, brush off the snow with frozen hands, and close the creaking door behind you. It doesn't do much. There's a permanent draft whispering in through every crack in the walls, tickling the back of your neck like an unwelcome ghost. Your home, like most peasant dwellings in the medieval countryside, is one room, maybe two if you're wealthy. The walls are wattle and daub, a kind of medieval spackle made from twigs and a glorious mixture of clay, mud, and cow dung. It's technically solid, but let's not kid ourselves. It's not keeping the cold out. There's a central hearth, if you're lucky, but no chimney, so smoke lingers around your head, turning your eyes red and giving your clothes that eternal smoked scent. At least you'll smell like you've been cooked if you ever freeze solid. You take off your outer layer, coarse, woolen and damp, and hang it near the hearth to dry. Not too close though. Cloth catches fire like nobody's business, and house fires in the winter. Brutal. You've heard of whole families perishing that way, too slow to wake, too fast for the flames. Fire is your only hope for warmth, and also your most immediate threat. Comforting. Your sleeping area isn't exactly a bedroom. It's more like wherever there's space. Maybe a wooden plank raised off the dirt floor. Maybe just the dirt itself covered in straw or hay and a few rags. There's no such thing as personal space. You, your family, maybe a boarder or two, all curled up like mismatched spoons, seeking out every trace of warmth from one another's bodies. Privacy? Absolutely not. But hypothermia doesn't care about modesty. The night outside deepens. You hear it in the wind's rising whistle and the crack of ice expanding on the water bucket near the door. Inside, there's only a tiny fire flickering weakly in the hearth. You threw your last few sticks on an hour ago, and the embers are glowing red like sleepy eyes. You know better than to feed it now. You have to ration your wood. Tomorrow you'll cut more, assuming the axe handle doesn't splinter from the cold. For tonight, you wrap a woolen scrap around your head and pull your knees to your chest. That's as good as it gets. The cold makes everything hurt. Your joints, already inflamed from malnutrition and hard labour, seize up in the night. Your toes? Numb. And you know that if they stay that way too long, they could turn black and die. It's not uncommon. Folk around here have names for it. Blackfoot, white bite. You've seen it. A neighbour's uncle lost a finger last year. Turned purple, then grey, then gone. You say a quiet prayer as you tuck your hands into your armpits and try to force yourself to sleep. Tonight, the cold is bad enough to keep the mice from scurrying. That's a tiny win, because you usually hear them darting through the thatch above your head, or scratching along the floorboards, or your blanket, or sometimes your actual face. They're bold like that. As your eyes start to close, someone across the room coughs, a hacking, phlegmy bark that echoes in the still air. Everyone hears it. No one says anything. Illness runs rampant in these tight quarters. There's no escaping it, and with no warmth, your body has fewer defences. People don't just freeze to death. They waste away, night by night, trying to stay warm enough to survive until spring. Your dreams tonight are thin and restless. In them, you're warm again, sitting near a roaring fire, wrapped in fur, drinking something hot. But even your dreams know it's fake. The cold is too real, pressing through even imagination. Historically speaking, winters in parts of medieval Europe could be vicious. During the Little Ice Age, a period of regional cooling that started in the 14th century and lasted into the 19th, temperatures dropped noticeably. Rivers froze, harvests failed, famine followed. For peasants, who were already living on the edge of survival, winter wasn't an inconvenience. It was a yearly trial. Every degree drop in temperature meant more fuel needed, more food burned, and fewer chances of getting through February with your family intact. But here's a fun, if slightly unhinged, historical tidbit. Some people believed that extreme cold could trap evil spirits in the home, so they'd perform smoke ceremonies inside their own huts, burning herbs or even dung to purify the air, which frankly just added more smoke to a place already choking on it. But hey, anything to scare off a demon, right? There's still some scholarly debate over just how harsh these winters really were, or if peasant huts were even colder than being outside. Some argue the buildings were poorly ventilated and filled with damp air, making them worse than sleeping under the stars. Others believe that body heat, even in such crude shelters, made a measurable difference. What's agreed on? Peasants didn't sleep comfortably, they endured the night. Every single one, and so do you. You're not sleeping, you're surviving. Each hour that passes is a quiet victory. Outside, the wind howls. Inside, your breath comes in short, foggy puffs. You shift under your scratchy blanket, curl tighter against the cold, and wait for morning. You open your eyes, not because you're rested, but because the cold has wormed its way deeper into your bones. It's still dark. Could be midnight, could be dawn. Time in the Middle Ages isn't something you measure by a clock, but by instincts sharpened by routine. You can hear someone snoring unevenly nearby, and there's the soft shifting of bodies under shared coverings. There's no fire left, only ash and the memory of warmth, still faintly glowing beneath a thin dusting of soot. Your stomach grumbles. It's too early to eat, but hunger has no manners. You shift slightly on your bedding, a word that sounds far more luxurious than it feels. The straw pokes through the holey linen beneath your hip, and when you roll over, you feel something small and hard beneath the mat. A rock, a knot of hay. Either way, it's your pillow now. The bedroom, if you can even call it that, is part of the one main living area. There's no wall, no division, no sense of privacy or separation. The entire family sleeps here, stacked like firewood in a corner of the house. The lucky might have a simple wooden frame, a box with rope or hide stretched across it, sagging under the weight of too many winters. Most sleep on the floor, packed in close. You, your siblings, your parents, sometimes a grandparent, and often a couple of animals for good measure. A goat, maybe a piglet, curled near the hearth for the same reason you are. It sounds ridiculous now, but if you had to choose between sleeping next to a smelly animal or losing a toe to frostbite, the goat wins every time. It's hard to tell how old the floor is, but you know it well. It's earthen, uneven, and has absorbed every spill, every crumb, every sweat and cough for years. There's a faint smell, mould maybe, and old wood smoke, a musty, lived-in scent you no longer register as unpleasant. It just is. You shift again. The dirt is cold, but it holds less betrayal than the mattress stuffed with straw. At least you know what to expect from it. Sleeping on the floor, as strange as it seems, actually makes sense when you remember that raised bedding is rare, expensive, and often only used by the sick, the elderly, or the well-off. It also helps keep you closer to the fire, what little of it there was. You reach to your side and feel the wall. It's a lumpy mass of wattle and daub. Your fingers graze the occasional splinter of wood poking through the plaster, and a draught snakes in through a crack near your shoulder. Someone tried stuffing the gap with moss or rags, but it didn't hold. Still, any effort helps, because when the wind howls like it does tonight, every crevice is a door for winter to slip through. You pull your cloak tighter around yourself. It's not a blanket. It's the same thing you wear all day, a threadbare woolen wrap that might once have been part of something nicer. Beneath that, you wear your regular clothes. Undressing for sleep is a luxury for people with fireplaces in their bedrooms. For you, it's layers on layers, the only barrier between your skin and the creeping freeze. You shift again, pressing your back against your sister's and trying not to disturb her. The warmth she gives off is precious, almost sacred. You're not even sure if she's asleep, but neither of you speaks. There's an unspoken agreement. Conserve warmth, conserve energy, conserve silence. A rat skitters somewhere above in the thatch. You hear it dislodging a piece of straw, which flutters down like the world's saddest snowflake. No one reacts. Rats are a given. You're more worried about the lice, tiny vampires that feast on your scalp and neck in the dark. You scratch absent-mindedly, knowing there's no end to them. Bathing this time of year is rare, and even when it's done, it's in freezing river water or a barely lukewarm wooden tub, assuming one of the richer households lends it to you. Soap is a homemade slurry, rough on skin and laughably ineffective. Still, your body tries to rest. You listen to the house groan. The timbers creak in the cold like they're protesting their very existence. The roof lets in the occasional drip of melting snow or rain, and you pray that tonight isn't the night the thatch gives out. Repairs are spring work, and spring feels years away. You think of how sleep doesn't work the way it will centuries from now. In your world, sleep isn't one continuous stretch. It's broken, fractured. Historians today refer to this as segmented sleep. A first sleep and a second sleep with a waking period in between. You don't know the science of it, but you know the rhythm by heart. You fall asleep shortly after sundown, wake sometime around midnight, and drift again before dawn. During that in-between time, people talk, pray, sometimes even visit neighbours. You don't tonight. You just lie there, quietly breathing and trying to keep from shivering. Scholars still debate why this segmented sleep pattern existed. Was it purely environmental, a natural response to cold, darkness, and the seasonal rhythm? Or was it shaped by social life, religious habits? One theory says that waking in the middle of the night was seen as sacred time, when the veil between worlds was thinnest. Monks and nuns prayed during this time. Commoners whispered prayers, too, or shared secret conversations in the dark. But right now, you're not feeling especially mystical. You're just tired. Your breath comes out in small clouds, visible in the slant of moonlight slipping through the gaps in the roof. The light drips down on the dirt floor like pale silver, catching on the rough surfaces of wooden bowls and tools tucked away near the wall. The room is still except for the occasional cough or murmur from a sleeping body. You close your eyes again, willing your muscles to relax. There's work to do tomorrow, always. Another day of toil, another frozen night to follow. You don't know that this kind of sleep, the shared, segmented, deeply communal kind, will one day vanish. That future centuries will bring individual bedrooms, alarm clocks, and memory foam. What you know is this: warmth is rare, comfort is fleeting, and sleep isn't about rest. It's about recovery. It's about making it to morning. And somewhere outside, beyond the thin walls, a fox cries into the frozen dark. The sun finally rises, but you wouldn't know it at first. Winter dawn in the Middle Ages is a slow, reluctant thing. A faint silver glow creeps along the edges of your hut, filtering through cracks in the threadbare linen draped over the single glassless window. It's enough to tell you the night is over, but not enough to warm your skin. Your limbs are stiff, your nose is numb, and there's straw stuck to your cheek. Your body aches like you've been sleeping on a pile of rocks. Which, to be fair, you sort of have. You sit up slowly, brushing frost from the edges of your blanket. It's thin and patchy, woven from coarse wool that was already worn out when it was handed down to you. Blankets in your world aren't luxurious throws or embroidered family heirlooms. They're anything with fabric and weight. Layers of old tunics, cloaks, even sacking from grain shipments. Your family has tried to sew them together into something bed-shaped, but the result is more quilt monster than comforter. At night, everyone pulls at it, hoarding little pieces of warmth under their own knees, backs or feet. Sharing is a theory that ends the moment the temperature drops below freezing. Bedding, as you know it, consists of two things: straw and whatever scraps of cloth haven't been turned into clothes. You pull back your makeshift cover and look at the ground beneath you. A pile of straw, mashed flat from nights of use, speckled with dirt and the occasional pebble. Some peasants mix it with herbs or leaves to make it smell slightly less like livestock, but most just accept the earthiness as part of the experience. You try to fluff it up a bit, but it's too frozen to move much. Besides, your hands are stiff, It's going to take time to warm them up enough to do anything useful. You glance at the pile of rags in the corner, once an old shirt, now your cousin's pillow. Not that anyone in the house has seen a real pillow, just bundles of cloth shaped vaguely into a lump that lifts your head a couple inches off the ground. You wonder, briefly, what it would feel like to sink your face into a feather-stuffed cushion, like the nobles do in their stone keeps. Then again, those places are drafty too, and at least here you can huddle up next to the pig. Ah yes, the pig. She's still snoring softly beside the hearth, curled into a pink ball of accidental generosity. Her body heat is worth more than your entire bedding setup. Animals aren't just livestock, they're hot water bottles that grunt. Sleeping with them might sound unsanitary to modern ears, and let's be honest, it absolutely is. But when the wind howls through the boards and the frost creeps across the inside of your walls, you'd happily spoon a chicken if it meant a warmer night. Not every home has the luxury of an animal inside. Sometimes it's simply too cramped, or the animals are penned in outbuildings. But for families like yours, lower on the social ladder, higher on desperation, it's normal. Dogs, goats, pigs, sometimes even cows, depending on the setup. They sleep in a corner, often on the same straw as the humans. You've grown used to the smells. The occasional snort or fart at night no longer phases you. In fact, it's comforting. Another sign that someone or something is alive and generating heat. There's something else too. Something not everyone today realizes. Fabric is precious. A decent length of wool is a valuable commodity. You don't have a closet full of clothes, and you definitely don't have extra sheets or blankets just lying around. The average peasant might own 1 or 2 tunics, maybe a cloak if they're lucky, and everything has to serve multiple purposes. Your cloak is also your blanket. Your undershirt might double as a head wrap on colder nights. Nothing is wasted. And the idea of laundering your bedding? Forget it. Washing fabric is labour-intensive, especially in winter. You'd need a fire to heat water, a tub to soak the fabric, and time you simply don't have. So the bedding gets seasoned. Each week adds a new layer of lived-in reality. You shake the straw out every now and then, maybe change the outer cloths if they're truly foul, but mostly you just lie down, pull the stink over your shoulders and pretend it's fine. A quirky fact: in some villages people would spread herbs like lavender, mint or pennyroyal in their bedding to mask odours and repel pests. Not because they were being fancy, but because lice and fleas hated strong smells. Of course, if you didn't have access to those herbs, or if they were needed for medicine, you just had to deal. Scratching yourself to sleep was an accepted part of bedtime. You look around the room as your breath forms small clouds in the morning air. Everything is still touched by frost. The wooden bowls on the shelf have a thin layer of rime on them, and the iron pot by the hearth has frozen, solid. Someone will have to break the ice in the water bucket soon, hopefully not you. The fire is dead and relighting it isn't easy. You don't have flint on hand, only the old coals from last night, carefully banked under ash in the hope they'd stay warm. You kneel by the hearth, prod the pile with a stick, and pray. A faint orange glow winks at you. It's not dead yet. You blow gently, your breath shaky in the cold, coaxing life from the embers. It might take an hour to get a proper flame going again, but it's worth it. Fire means hot porridge. It means warmth for at least a few minutes before it escapes up through the roof. As you coax the coals, you think about how winter always wins in the end. You fight it every night with straw, scraps, body heat and wishful thinking, and it still presses in. There's a hopelessness to it, but also something weirdly comforting. Everyone you know is doing the same thing. This is how it is, how it's always been. You know the names of the families who didn't make it through last winter. You see the hollow look in the eyes of those who lost a child or a parent to a cold night and an empty woodpile. Scholars today argue about just how unbearable medieval winter really was. Some suggest people adapted surprisingly well with layer upon layer of wool and clever construction tricks. Others believe we underestimate the toll of chronic cold, how it stunted growth, weakened immunity, and quietly drained life across generations. The truth is probably in the middle. You're not freezing to death every night, but you're also never not cold. That lingering ache never quite leaves. With a spark of flame finally flickering into life, you sit back on your heels and rub your hands together. The pig grunts awake, unimpressed. Your sister stirs under the rags, and your mother begins to shuffle in the corner, already preparing for the day ahead. The hut is awake. The cold is still here. But for now, you've won one small victory. You made it through the night. You're awake. Barely. Not in the alert, ready for the day kind of way. More like the bleary, still half-frozen kind where your limbs feel like someone else's, and your brain is about 5 seconds behind your body. Still, you're up. Because staying in bed isn't really an option when the fire's nearly out and your job for the day is to not die of cold or hunger. You push back the patchy covers and rise from the floor, careful not to knock into the pig. She's not in the mood, and honestly, neither are you. There's no morning routine in your world, not unless you count coughing up the night's chill and checking your fingers for signs of frostbite. You shuffle toward the hearth. The little flame you worked so hard to coax into life earlier has grown, licking the blackened stones with an energy that almost feels like companionship. The fire is the heart of this house. Not metaphorically, literally. It's the only thing standing between your family and a slow, bitter decline into the kind of sleep you don't wake up from. And here's the thing. Despite all that, your home doesn't have a chimney. That's right. All that smoke from the burning logs, it just kind of lives here now. A blackened cloud that hovers near the ceiling, seeps into your hair, coats your lungs. If you're lucky, there's a hole somewhere near the roof to let it escape. But even that's a gamble. Smoke just finds its own way out, or doesn't. That's why your eyes always sting and why everything in the house, including your breakfast, tastes like ash. You sit on a low stool beside the hearth, warming your hands while your mother stirs a pot of porridge. Stirring is a generous term. It's more like scraping thick paste from the bottom of an iron pot that hasn't been truly clean in, well, ever. Still, it's hot. That's all that matters. Warm food is a gift in this season, even if it's just oats boiled in water and sprinkled with a little salt. If you're especially lucky, there might be a few leftover turnips, or a scrap of bacon if the pig had an unfortunate accident recently. As you sip your portion, careful not to burn your tongue, the rest of the house creaks awake. Your siblings shift out from under the shared blanket pile. The eldest grumbles, the youngest sniffles. Your father grunts a few words no one quite hears as he grabs his boots. There's work to be done, and it's not like the cold cares how tired anyone is. But even now, in the flurry of morning movements, one figure remains curled up on the ground. A cousin, maybe, or a neighbour who's been staying the last few nights. Someone who doesn't have their own fire. You've all been there. When your own hearth runs out of wood, or your roof starts leaking, you go where the heat is. That's the thing about winter out here. It doesn't give you the luxury of pride. Sleeping arrangements are whatever keeps you warm. Sometimes that means crowding 6 people into a space built for 2. Other times, it means sleeping pressed against someone you barely know, because shared body heat is currency. On the coldest nights, there's no shame in crawling under someone else's rags. Modesty dies at around 5 degrees below freezing, and yes, that includes animals. Most people today would flinch at the idea of sleeping next to a goat, let alone bringing a cow inside your home. But for peasants like you, animals are basically walking radiators with hooves. Their warmth isn't just helpful, it's survival. Chickens tucked under armpits, dogs curled at feet, pigs snoring beside the fire. Some people even shared their bedding with sheep. If it sounds like a barnyard, that's because it is. But a warm, snoring barnyard beats a noble's icy stone chamber any day of the week. It wasn't just the heat either. Animals gave you a sense of life in the house, a kind of low-level comfort. The rhythmic breathing of the pig, the soft clucking of a hen laying before sunrise. It reminded you that everything hadn't frozen solid, that the house was still alive, even in a room so cold your breath curled in front of your face. Those small signs meant something. The funny part? This practice wasn't limited to the poorest peasants. Even middle-tier families, the kind who might have enough land to rent out a bit or own a second cow, often kept animals inside during the worst winter weeks. Not because they liked the company, but because letting your only pig freeze to death was economic suicide. You needed it alive for spring, or more accurately, for slaughter in spring. So yeah, let it nap by the fire, let it snuggle up next to the toddler. Everyone wins, except hygiene. You finish your porridge and stand, brushing off your tunic. Your body feels heavy, half awake, still aching from the stone-like sleep of last night. But there's a brief moment of warmth now. The fire is going, the pot is still steaming, and the pig is rolling over, releasing a puff of steam like a dragon with indigestion. It won't last, of course. In a few hours the hearth will need more wood. By dusk, you'll be tired again. And come nightfall, the cycle begins anew. Crowd together, pile on the scraps, beg the fire to hold on just a little longer. It's worth mentioning that scholars still discuss the effects of this deeply communal style of sleeping. Was it emotionally comforting, or did it blur personal boundaries in ways that harmed relationships? There's no single answer. For some, sleeping with family members or neighbours created trust and warmth, both literal and emotional. For others, it was suffocating, even traumatic. There's debate too about the health risks. Sharing bedding with animals and people alike increased the spread of disease, lice, and respiratory illness. But given the alternative, freezing alone, most peasants didn't weigh the pros and cons. They just squeezed in tighter. Out in the daylight now, you pull your cloak tighter around yourself, stepping over a muddy threshold and into the frost-bitten air. The fields are still dusted in white, trees skeletal, the sky pale and silent. The cold isn't gone, it's never gone. But for now, your breath is moving, your legs carry you, and the hearth back home still smoulders. And tonight, you'll do it all again. Evening falls again faster than you expect, though it always does in winter. The sun barely shows its face before it slips back behind the hills like it regrets coming up at all. You've spent the day hauling wood, mending fences stiff with frost, and trying not to let your fingers freeze to whatever tool you happen to be holding. Now, as the sky sinks into that familiar iron grey, you trudge back toward your hut, boots caked with half-frozen mud, cheeks burning from the cold. The wind bites harder now, slicing through your layers like it's personally offended by your attempts to stay warm. You duck inside and close the crooked wooden door behind you. The warmth doesn't hit you. That's because it's not there. The fire has gone out. Not completely, but it's down to a few bitter embers, glowing like dying stars. You curse under your breath, then rush to the hearth, already fumbling for twigs and dry scraps to coax it back to life. Every family member knows the drill. Keep the fire going. No fire means no dinner, no heat, no sleep. Just the long, cold wait for morning. Once it's going again, smoke billowing freely across the room because of course there's still no chimney. You sit back and let the warmth soak into your face like rain in a dry field. It's not much, but it's something. Your eyes water from the smoke and your lungs protest a little with each breath, but it's better than the cold. Now, about that chimney situation, or rather, the lack of one. Most peasant homes in the Middle Ages didn't have what we'd recognise as a chimney. The fire sat in a shallow pit or a basic hearth in the centre or side of the room. The smoke just rose up into the rafters and eventually found its way out through a hole in the roof. Or didn't. On bad days, the entire house would fill with thick grey smoke, forcing people to crouch low or open a door, letting the bitter wind blast through just to avoid asphyxiation. The soot clings to everything. Your hair, your clothes, your food. Even your teeth get that gritty texture after a few winters of breathing in burnt peat and wet wood. But here's the kicker. The smoke, as awful as it is, does something useful. It helps preserve the wooden beams of the house, keeps insects out. Some say it even wards off evil spirits. So yeah, choking on black air while you eat dinner, that's just bonus protection from demons and termites. You move around the house, checking the windows. Not that you have glass. Who do you think you are, a bishop? No, your windows are small, square holes with wooden shutters or scraps of cloth draped over them. In the summer, they let in light. In the winter, they let in regret. Tonight, you stuff a few tufts of straw and old rags around the edges to block the draft. It's a fool's effort, but you do it anyway. You've learned to treat even the illusion of warmth like a victory. Eventually, night fully falls. The sky outside turns black, spangled with stars so sharp and clear it's almost unfair. There's no light pollution here, no haze, just the frozen stillness of a world locked under ice and silence. Inside, you sit by the fire, eating your meal, a bit of bread if you're lucky, maybe a few boiled root vegetables. The smoky flavour is unavoidable. You chew in silence, the heat from the fire baking your face while your back stays stubbornly cold. As you eat, your grandmother tells a story, not loudly, just a murmur in the dimness. A tale of wolves in the forest or a spirit that walks at dusk. The kind of story that makes you feel colder, even though you're already wrapped in every piece of clothing you own. The shadows in the corners of the room seem to move in time with her voice. The fire cracks and everyone jumps a little. These are the moments when the lack of a chimney feels less like an inconvenience and more like a character in the room, breathing, huffing, cloaking everything in smoke and ash and whispered warnings. Fun fact, in some rural homes, the rafters were black with soot and people would hang meat up there to dry. Yes, your ceiling is a smoker. Practical? Absolutely. Sanitary? Let's not dwell on that. But that's how you survive, by making everything do double duty. Every surface, every tool, every smoky rafter is pressed into service just to carry your family through another night. And there's something else. The ceiling smoke kept bugs at bay, mites, lice, fleas. They didn't enjoy the constant fumes. So while your lungs might be giving up, your hair remains marginally less infested. Tiny wins. But let's not pretend it's comfortable. Your eyes sting constantly. Your throat stays raw all winter. When you lie down, you do so in a haze of smoke. It gets into your dreams, and it doesn't go away with morning light. It clings, a part of your skin now. There's ongoing scholarly debate about how tolerable these smoky interiors really were. Some argue people grew accustomed to the conditions that their bodies adapted. Others suggest the health toll was immense. Chronic respiratory problems, eye infections, stunted growth in children. It's hard to know for sure because peasants like you didn't leave behind medical journals, just bones. But even those tell a story of lives weathered by more than just hard labour, lives worn down by the very air they breathed. Still, you wouldn't trade that fire. It's your only source of heat, light and food. You've heard stories of winters so hard that entire families froze to death huddled together in homes that went dark when the last ember died. So you feed the fire like it's sacred. You guard it like a treasure. Tonight someone will wake up every few hours just to check it, to add another stick, to make sure the smoke keeps curling upward. You curl up on the straw again, settling into your designated spot. It's a little warmer now. The fire has done its work. The smoke hangs thick, and you can barely see the ceiling. But your toes are thawed. Your stomach has something in it, and your family is breathing beside you. You tuck your cloak around your shoulders, close your eyes, and exhale. You made it through another day. Tonight sleep creeps in slowly, like fog curling low over the hills outside. The fire is still alive, but it's quieter now, glowing red under a shell of ash, sending out the last of its warmth in cautious pulses. You're lying on your side, eyes half closed, your breath rising in soft clouds. Around you the family begins to settle. The older ones mutter a final prayer. The youngest is already snoring, head resting, on a folded tunic. The pig, still your unofficial roommate, shifts beside the hearth, letting out a grunt that sounds suspiciously like a complaint. But you're not quite asleep yet. Because you know this isn't a full sleep. Not in the way the future will think of it. You're heading into what people now call first sleep. You've done this your whole life, though no one gives it a name in your village. It's just the way it works. Sleep comes in 2 rounds. First sleep after nightfall, then a waking period, and second sleep before dawn. The rhythm of it is tied to darkness, to how long the nights stretch in winter, and to the slow heartbeat of a world without clocks. So you lie there, letting that first sleep take you. It's shallow at first, then deeper, until you're falling through layers of cold and warmth and memory. Hours pass, uncounted. Outside, the night deepens. The wind presses against the house, groaning through the gaps, testing the shuttered window with impatient fingers. Inside, the embers dim further, and the warmth starts to ebb. Then, your eyes open. You're awake, not startled, not afraid, just alert. It's sometime between midnight and maybe 2 a.m, though you can't say for sure. You've entered the watch, the in-between. That strange liminal slice of night when everything is hushed and still, yet alive in its own secret way. Around you, a few others stir as well. Your father clears his throat quietly. Your sister shifts, eyes open, blinking at the ceiling. Even the pig lifts its head, snorts once, then flops back down. This waking time is accepted, expected. You don't question it. Some people use it to tend to tasks, mending a shirt, sharpening a knife, whispering, praying. There's no rush to fall back asleep because there's still plenty of darkness left. The world is paused, and for a few quiet moments so are your usual worries. It's too dark to work, too early to rise. All you can do is be here, breathing, curled beneath your cloak, in the middle of the longest part of the year. You listen to your mother whisper a soft Ave Maria. Her voice is thin, barely above the crackle of the coals. In this twilight state between sleeps, prayer feels different, more personal, less about performance, more about desperation. This hour belongs to no one but God, or whatever shadows haunt the edge of your imagination. Some people believe dreams are strongest during this in-between. Others say it's when demons whisper or witches wander. You've heard both. Old Marta down the road claimed she saw a shape in the yard during the second sleep last winter. Eyes like fire, breathing steam. No one believed her, exactly. But they still started bringing in extra kindling after that. In some towns, you've heard, neighbours use this time to visit each other. Not just out of boredom, but because it's easier to talk when the world is silent and the sky is black. There's a kind of intimacy to this hour that daytime can't offer. Confessions, soft laughter, stolen kisses in the corner of a room. It's a strange mix of sacred and human. Even monks rise at this hour to chant and pray. In fact, some scholars today argue that broken sleep wasn't a problem to be solved. It was a gift. A natural pattern disrupted only by modern lighting and industrial schedules. You don't think about any of that, of course. You're just here, half awake, warming your hands by the embers and scratching at your neck because something bit you in your sleep. A fringe detail that gets overlooked. People sometimes use this waking time to check on their animals, not out of affection, but necessity. If a cow froze or a chicken was missing, you needed to know now, not in the morning when it might be too late. So a quiet figure might slip out into the snow, lantern in hand, boots crunching across the hard-packed yard to make sure the pen still holds. Every creature counts in winter. Every warm body is part of the equation that equals survival. Tonight, you stay inside. The fire's too low and you can already feel your toes growing stiff again. You pull your sister's feet closer under the shared cover and she doesn't wake, but you know she'll be glad of it when morning comes. You wrap yourself tighter in your cloak and lie back. The room smells like smoke, sour wool, and boiled root vegetables. Last night's dinner still hanging in the air like a ghost. Your mind wanders. Maybe you think of spring, of how green the fields will be once the snow finally melts and the thatch stops dripping onto your blanket. Or maybe you remember last winter, when your uncle didn't make it through, when he slipped into his second sleep and didn't wake. The silence of this hour makes those memories louder. You feel them in the stillness. Eventually your body relaxes again. Your eyes grow heavy. Second sleep is calling. You don't resist. You let yourself drift back into the warm dark, into dreams that blur with the cold edge of the real. And as your breathing slows, the fire gives one last flicker, like a nod to your persistence. This rhythm of two sleeps continues through the season, night after night. It's a dance you didn't choose but know by heart. You've always done it this way. Everyone has. And though it feels strange to modern minds, this waking in the middle of the night, it's one of the most natural things about your world. There's a quiet strength in this pattern. It reminds you that night isn't just a void between days. It's a space with its own structure, its own secrets. And though the fire is small, the bed is rough, and the cold never quite goes away. For now, in this moment, you're part of something ancient, a rhythm older than memory. As your breath steadies and your body slips fully into the second sleep, you understand. This is how people have endured the dark for centuries. By morning, the cold has found its way into everything. Again, it always does. You wake up with a stiff neck and the kind of groggy ache that makes you question whether sleep even helped. Your joints feel like they've been borrowed from someone 3 times your age, and there's a sharp pain in your shoulder from where a knot of straw jabbed you all night. You sit up slowly, pushing off the damp, musty rags that pass for bedding. It's not even fully light outside, just a pale smudge of grey bleeding into the cracks around the window covering. The air in the room is bitter, not chilly, bitter. It bites at your nose and the tips of your ears the second you emerge from the warmth of the shared sleeping pile. Your breath clouds in front of you, curling into tiny ghosts that vanish almost immediately. You reach for your cloak without thinking. It's cold to the touch, stiff in places from where moisture has frozen during the night. You pull it around your shoulders anyway. At this point, cold fabric is better than bare skin. It's always a race. How fast can you get up and layer on everything you own before the numbness starts spreading? You move to the window and peel back the linen. Outside, the world is white and still, wrapped in a crust of frost. The thatched roofs of neighbouring huts wear icy crowns. A lone crow picks at something in the snow, too stubborn or too desperate to migrate. The fields, once alive with green and chatter, are silent now, buried under a thick frozen blanket. It looks peaceful from a distance, but you know better. It's not peace. It's pause. A cold, hard waiting. Inside the house, it's time to do the morning ritual. Seal the heat in, or what little there is. Your mother is already stuffing straw into the window's edges, plugging the gaps where the wind tries to sneak in. It's a kind of silent war. Every day, winter presses forward, and every day you push it back with scraps and stubbornness. Old cloth, moss, animal hair, even mud. Anything to fill the cracks in the walls. It's insulation, medieval style. Not effective, but better than nothing. You grab a clump of straw and wedge it between two beams near the doorframe. You know this spot well. It always lets the cold whistle through like a knife blade. There's no such thing as a sealed home in your world. Air flows through every seam. Heat escapes like it's late for something. And with no chimney, the fire's smoke seeps into every fibre of the house. In some ways, it helps. Smoke-laced air hangs heavier, keeps out insects, and adds a few degrees of warmth. But it's a balancing act between smothering and freezing. Thatched roofs, the pride of peasant ingenuity, are also part of the problem. They're made from layers of straw, heaped and tied, thick enough to shed rain, but not thick enough to keep out the chill. In summer, the thatch is your best friend, shielding you from the sun. In winter, it's an indifferent acquaintance at best. Cold seeps through it. Occasionally snow works its way, inside, melting into your bedding or dripping down the back of your neck at the worst possible moment. Still, people try to make it work. Some add another layer of thatch before winter. Others pack the roof from the inside with more straw or even bits of cloth. A few lucky families smear their walls with fresh mud mixed with animal hair to seal up weak spots. An unpleasant job, but surprisingly effective. You've done it yourself, slathering frozen mud into wall cracks with fingers so numb you couldn't tell if they were bleeding. But you did it anyway, because the wind doesn't care how tired or cold you are. It just keeps coming. You glance up at the rafters, already blackened with years of smoke. The support beams are rough and crooked, probably scavenged from the forest decades ago. Between them, a few odds and ends are tucked away. Bundles of dried herbs, spare tools, maybe even an old shirt or two kept for emergencies. You wonder if it's worth grabbing one of those shirts for an extra layer tonight. Probably not. You'll need it later. Always ration the warmth. As you move back toward the hearth, your foot hits a cold patch on the floor where the roof must have leaked again. You curse under your breath. You'll have to deal with it later. For now, it's time to get the fire going. You kneel down, poking at the grey ash, searching for a spark. A little ember flares back at you like a tired eye, and you feel a tiny rush of relief. With some gentle coaxing, a few slivers of bark, and your breath fogging the air, the fire begins to crackle again. The flames are thin and reluctant, but they're there. That counts. As the fire grows, your siblings gather near like moths to heat. Everyone stretches out their fingers, letting the warmth crawl across their skin. Someone pulls their cloak tighter. Someone else tugs the pig closer. You share space, share air, and share warmth like it's gold. Because in winter, it is. And here's a quirky bit of peasant ingenuity. In some regions, people hung heavy curtains or animal hides inside their own one-room homes, dividing the space to trap heat, creating a smaller room within a room where sleeping bodies could retain a little more warmth, a medieval version of a thermal bubble. It worked, sort of, but hides are expensive, and your family doesn't own enough animals to spare a single one for curtains. So instead, you all rely on layers of clothes, of bodies, of blankets that aren't really blankets. Scholars have noted that despite the primitive materials, peasants developed a surprisingly complex understanding of how heat moved through their homes. They knew where the drafts came from, they knew which corners of the room stayed coldest, they knew that packing the floor with straw, not just under your bedding but everywhere, could help insulate against the frozen ground. Dirt floors are terrible conductors, but straw is magic, smelly, itchy and full of mice, but magic nonetheless. Of course, not everyone agrees. Some researchers believe we romanticize peasant resilience too much. They argue that for all these clever tricks, many homes were simply too drafty, too damp, too cold to offer anything close to real comfort. It wasn't a matter of surviving comfortably, it was surviving barely. And that's fair, because even with all your efforts, you're still cold. You're always cold. There's never enough insulation, never enough wood, never enough fire. But even so, you do it. Day after day, you patch the cracks, stuff the holes, and pile on whatever you can find. And somehow, even in the worst part of the year, your little patchwork world holds together. You sit back down by the fire, your cloak wrapped tight around you. Outside, the frost is thick enough to sparkle. Inside, your breath still fogs the air. But for now, the smoke rises slow and steady. The wind stays out. The fire stays in. You've won another hour. It's late again, and you're crawling back under your pile of everything vaguely warm. Rags, cloaks, old sacks, a worn-out tunic that still smells like your uncle. The floor crunches softly beneath your knees as you settle in. Not because there's anything fancy like gravel down there, but because the straw's frozen stiff. You feel every stem poking at your hips through the thin barrier of your tunic, but at this point, you've learned not to care. Pain is just part of the bedtime routine, like brushing your teeth, if brushing your teeth involved bleeding gums and no actual toothbrush. Someone lets out a long sigh nearby. Maybe your sister, maybe your mother. It's hard to tell anymore in this tangle of sleeping bodies. You've all packed in together, tight and close, in what could generously be described as a medieval cuddle pile. The goal? Generate as much warmth as possible, because the fire's barely hanging on, and the wind outside sounds like it's trying to claw its way through the walls. You scoot in tighter, pressing your legs against the pig, who grunts indignantly but doesn't move. Her bulk is the warmest thing in the room, and everyone knows it. You're not above bribing her with a stolen carrot if it means she'll stay curled up near your feet. It's not weird, it's strategic. This is what you've come to rely on every single winter. Body heat. Glorious, sweaty, awkward, life-saving body heat. You don't really think about it anymore. It's just what happens. You sleep shoulder to shoulder, chest to back, foot to foot, wrapped around each other like a nest of shivering snakes. Some families even have a sleeping order. Who gets the middle spot? Who gets the edge? Who gets stuck near the wall where the frost creeps in like an uninvited guest? You've tried that spot. You'd rather sleep with your head in the fire. And don't get romantic about it. This isn't the cozy huddle of a storybook campfire. Everyone smells. There's snoring. There's twitching. At least one person farts every night and pretends they didn't. But no one says a word, because every warm body counts. And when the temperature dips below freezing, even your least favourite sibling becomes a source of salvation. You'd hold hands with the devil himself if it meant a warmer blanket. Still, there are some logistics. You don't just pile in without thinking. There's a kind of quiet strategy to it all. The youngest in the middle, the oldest, often at the edge. Because they're tougher, or maybe just because they snore and nobody wants them in the centre. If there's a baby, it's wrapped tight and tucked between two adults. If there's a dog, it probably sleeps right in the curve of someone's back. And yes, the pig has a spot too, always. People sometimes call this bundle sleeping. Scholars today have even written papers about it, pointing out that the collective body heat of a packed family could raise the immediate sleeping temperature by several degrees. It's a literal group effort to survive the night, an instinctive, practical solution that every peasant learned without needing a lecture or a thermometer. Your ancestors weren't idiots. They understood thermodynamics long before anyone named it. A fun little fringe fact. Some medieval folks even warmed up bricks or stones in the fire and placed them under their bedding to keep warm longer. Problem is, stones crack if you don't heat them properly, and sometimes they explode. So yes, people have absolutely had their straw mattresses set on fire by overzealous bed-warming attempts. You personally don't trust hot rocks in your bed. You've seen how fast a single spark can undo your entire night. As the night deepens, the fire sputters down to a soft red glow. The room is dark except for the occasional flicker of orange reflecting off someone's cheek or the shiny rim of the iron pot still hanging above the coals. You can hear breathing all around you, slow, staggered, some with a whistle, some with a rasp. It's not exactly peaceful, but it's familiar, like the sound of survival. Your own face is cold, your nose has gone numb, and your lips feel like they've been dipped in ice water. You try pulling your blanket higher, but it's already at its limit. So instead, you press your face into your sister's back and let the heat from her spine warm your forehead. She murmurs something in her sleep, maybe a dream, maybe a protest, but doesn't move away. The heat builds slowly, not enough to make you sweat, but enough to take the edge off, enough to trick your body into thinking it's safe to sleep, and eventually your muscles start to let go. Your jaw unclenches, your shoulders sink an inch closer to the floor. You feel the warmth of someone's foot brush against yours, and even though you don't know whose it is, you're grateful. There's debate among historians about how comfortable this arrangement actually was. Some argue it brought families closer, literally and emotionally. Others suggest it bred resentment and exhaustion, especially in large households where the lines between siblings and strangers blurred. After all, privacy didn't exist. Sleeping, dressing, coughing, crying, everything happened in public, in shared space. You learned early not to expect solitude, or secrets. And yet, there's a strange sort of comfort in it too, in the rhythm of bodies breathing in time, in the shared silence of people too tired to talk. You feel it tonight, even as the wind screeches outside and the walls groan under the weight of the cold. You're not alone. You're part of a human furnace, messy, stinking, imperfect, but alive. Some nights are colder than others. On those nights, the pile gets tighter. No one complains, no one jokes. Everyone just shifts a little closer, wraps arms where there used to be space, tucks chins under cloaks. It's not affection, it's instinct, like animals huddling in a den. Because if the fire dies and the wind gets in, this is all you have. Warm skin, shared breath. The friction of life pressing back against the cold. Eventually your eyes drift shut again. The straw pokes, someone sneezes. The pig lets out one last wet grunt. But the warmth holds. Just enough. You wake up with your face buried in wool, scratchy, oily wool that smells faintly of sheep and wood smoke, and somehow also of wet dirt. Your eyes crack open to a hazy swirl of steam rising from someone's breath nearby. It takes a second to remember where you are, not because you're confused, but because every winter morning feels exactly like this. Dark, cold, crowded, and wrapped in the lingering dampness of too many bodies sleeping in too little space. You shift and feel the weight of your blanket, a generous term for what's actually a ratty cloak stretched over you and half your siblings, fall away just enough to let the cold back in. Instantly your skin contracts, your knees tuck tighter toward your chest. The space beneath the cloak goes from tolerable to punishing in less than a second. You grit your teeth and pull it back over yourself, curling deeper into the warm pocket of shared air you and your family created overnight. And you're still dressed. Of course, you always sleep in your clothes. Not out of laziness, but because undressing is just not part of winter. Every layer is sacred. Under your tunic is another tunic, and beneath that a shirt that might once have been white, but is now a proud shade of brownish grey. Your leggings are patched and pulled tight around your calves, the wool stiff in places from frozen sweat, and the occasional splash of something unidentifiable from the pig. You don't ask questions anymore. You just wear it and move on. And here's the truth. These clothes, awful as they smell, are your only real insulation. Not just during the day, but while you sleep. You've layered them on for weeks now, rarely peeling off more than a boot or a hood to keep clean or check for lice. Personal hygiene? That's a springtime luxury. Winter demands sacrifice. Warmth trumps dignity every time. You lie there and feel how the different fabrics hold on to heat. The wool is the most faithful, warming up slowly but steadily. Linen, when it's dry, helps a bit too, but it clings when it's damp, and everything is damp eventually. If you're lucky, someone in the house has a bit of fur, rabbit perhaps, or if they were truly fortunate, sheepskin. Not you though, you don't own any fur. You remember your grandmother had a small pelt she used in her last winters. It disappeared the year she died. Sold, maybe, or buried with her. Hard to say. Even if you did have fur, it's not like you could afford to wear it under your clothes. That's the outermost layer, the status symbol. Fur's not just for warmth. It's for showing people that you're not one bad winter away from starvation. You've seen the Reeve's wife walking through the village with her cloak lined in it, strutting like some sort of half-frozen peacock. You'd trade a toe for that coat, maybe two. As you lie there in your peasant bundle of grime and fibre, you think about how many layers you're actually wearing. 4? 5? 6? You stopped counting. Each one added gradually as the days got shorter and the night started biting. Some of the shirts don't even have sleeves anymore. One of them still has someone else's initials stitched into the hem. Doesn't matter. They all serve one purpose now: insulation. And when you get up, and you will, eventually, you'll wear all of it again. You'll walk around in a personal cocoon of fabric so bundled that you lose half your mobility and all your shape. You shuffle. You bend awkwardly. You can't really run. But at least you're not frozen solid. People joke about waddling like a bear, but the joke stops when the wind hits. Everyone waddles when it's 12 degrees outside and your bones feel like they're growing icicles. A weird historical detail: some peasants used to stuff moss or straw between layers of clothing, not just for padding, but for extra insulation. It worked, sort of. Think of it like medieval thermal wear, if thermal wear came with bugs and the occasional rash. You haven't tried it yourself. Yet. But you've heard your cousin swears by it. You're not sure if he smells like a haystack on purpose, or by accident. You scratch your shoulder under the wool and feel the rough patches where the fabric rubs your skin raw. You've got red streaks along your neck and hips, the kind of rash you get when the cold never leaves and the fabric never breathes. Your body itches in a dozen places, but you don't dare undress to scratch properly. That's the trade-off. Warmth now, skin complaints later. Some scholars today like to imagine that people in the Middle Ages lived in this sort of cosy rustic harmony with the seasons, adapting, beautifully with layers and clever tricks. And sure, that's not entirely wrong. People did what they had to do. They layered, they patched, they borrowed. But they also suffered. The cold didn't just inconvenience you, it invaded. It took over your muscles, your breath, your sleep, and yes, even your skin. Hypothermia might not always kill you outright, but it wore you down, night by night, until everything hurt. Still, the layers helped. When the wind howled through the walls and the fire died down to a whisper, you pulled your arms in tighter under your tunic and thanked whatever rag-stuffed saint kept the warmth from leaving entirely. You whispered your thanks in breathless puffs. You scratched and grumbled and curled into a tight shaking bundle, and you waited. That's what tonight feels like. You're lying there, counting your breaths, counting the warmth of your limbs, hoping the ice on the inside of the walls doesn't spread down to where you sleep. You shift again, and the pig stirs. Her snout brushes your foot. It's gross. It's wonderful. You don't move. Outside, the sky's black velvet, but the horizon is starting to soften with hints of steel grey. Morning is crawling back. You can feel it in your bones before you see it. You close your eyes and pull your cloak tighter for one last moment of sleep. It's not rest, exactly, but it's enough. And for now, that has to be. It begins the way it always does, with a cough. Not yours, thankfully, but from somewhere across the room. Deep, ragged, wet. It cuts through the silence like a dull knife dragging across wood. You flinch, instinctively curling tighter into your bedding. You don't need to look to know who it is. Your older brother's been coughing for days now, his voice rasping like the bellows at the blacksmith's forge. He says it's nothing. You all say that when it starts. But in winter, nothing can turn into not here anymore, faster than you'd like to admit. You lie still, listening to him wheeze in the darkness, the fire long since reduced to its red, pulsing heart. The cold presses in again, not as harsh as the outer wind, but persistent, like a hand on your chest that gets heavier with every passing hour. Someone stirs beside you. The pig lets out a soft grunt, then silence returns, save for the occasional sniff, rustle, or creak of the rafters above. Illness is a quiet predator in winter. It sneaks in when the doors are closed, slips under blankets, settles in your lungs. There's no doctor to call, no pills. Maybe an herbal poultice if someone in the village knows what they're doing. Maybe garlic or honey, if you're lucky enough to have either. But most of the time, you just wait. Wait and hope the fever breaks. Hope the cough goes away. Hope the shaking stops before your teeth fall out. The cold doesn't help. In fact, it makes everything worse. Sickness thrives in damp, poorly ventilated spaces, which unfortunately describes every peasant house in winter. The windows are sealed with cloth and straw to keep out the wind, but that also keeps in every cough, every sneeze, every breath. The fire might warm the air, but it doesn't clean it. If anything, the smoke just adds to the problem, stinging your throat, making everyone wheeze harder. And you all sleep together, packed close for warmth, breathing each other's air, sharing not just body heat but germs. There's no isolation, no sick room. When someone gets ill, the whole house knows, and eventually the whole house feels it. One by one, the coughs start, the chills, the headaches. It's like a slow chain reaction of misery, passed hand to hand, breath to breath. You shift slightly and feel the familiar ache in your joints. Not sickness, not yet, just the usual stiffness. You stretch your fingers under the cloak, wiggling them to make sure they still move. You've heard stories of people losing fingers, even toes in their sleep, flesh gone black and dead by morning. It sounds dramatic, but you've seen the aftermath. That old man in the next village who wears thick leather mitts year-round. Not a fashion choice, just hiding the damage. Even your toes feel numb now. You wiggle them in your boots. Yes, boots. You sleep in them, like most of your family does in winter. You don't trust the floor, and more importantly, you can't afford to let your feet get too cold. No sensation means no blood flow. No blood flow means, well, you've already got enough to worry about. And here's the thing. Peasants understood the risks. You might not have a word like hypothermia in your vocabulary, but you know. You know what cold does. You've watched strong men grow weaker each day, too exhausted to swing an axe or carry a pail. You've seen children who once ran through the fields now barely rise from the bedding, pale and silent and shrinking into themselves. There's a fringe belief, at least in some parts of the countryside, that winter is when evil spirits are strongest, that the cold carries curses, that when you wake up with trembling limbs and ice in your chest, it's not just illness, it's something darker, something unseen. That's why some people burn herbs near the hearth at night, not for the smell, for protection. A way of saying, not tonight, not this one. It might be superstition, but you've done it too. You try anything when someone's teeth are chattering and their breath comes in shallow gasps. Scholars still argue about how much of the medieval population's suffering came from environmental exposure versus disease. Was it the cold that killed so many, or the conditions it created? Some point to the lack of nutrition, how little fresh food was available in winter, making bodies vulnerable. Others emphasize the communal living spaces, the packed bedding, the unventilated air, the animal companions that brought warmth, but also parasites and disease. The truth probably is all of it. Death by 1,000 freezing cuts. You sit up slowly, careful not to wake anyone. The fire needs checking. You shuffle over in the dark, avoiding the snoring mound of siblings and the pig's surprisingly large backside. Kneeling near the hearth, you prod the coals. A little life remains, just enough. You feed it a few sticks, holding your breath until the flames catch and begin to grow. Light flickers across the sleeping bodies around you. Your brother coughs again. You glance his way. He's still breathing, chest rising and falling beneath a torn wool blanket. You reach for a spare rag and gently lay it across his shoulders. You don't say anything. You don't have to. You settle back onto your bedding. The warmth is slow to return. Your toes still sting. Your breath still curls upward in visible wisps. But the fire crackles now, and that's something. You close your eyes, trying not to listen too closely to the coughing, trying not to think about what might happen if the cold gets in too deep. or the fever rises too high. You tell yourself tomorrow will be better, that it's just a cough, that spring is coming, that everything will thaw eventually. But for now, you wrap yourself tighter and pray that warmth and life holds on through the night. You wake with your cheek pressed into the floor. Not a blanket, not a pillow, not even a scrap of cloth. Just the cold, hard-packed earth, gritty and rough against your skin like dried bread crust. You're not exactly sure how you ended up like this. Maybe you rolled in your sleep, or maybe someone else shifted and pushed you off the bedding. It doesn't really matter. You blink, exhale, and watch your breath dance in the dusty morning light. The floor is freezing, of course, but it's also familiar, comfortably uncomfortable, like an old pair of shoes you never quite broke in but wear anyway. And believe it or not, sometimes sleeping on the dirt is better, or at least not worse. You push yourself up slowly, bits of straw stuck in your hair and a dull ache creeping up your side. The dirt beneath you is dry, though not always. There have been mornings when you woke up with a damp patch beneath your shoulder, where snowmelt dripped through the thatch and pooled silently in the night. Those days are the worst, when the cold is mixed with wetness and seeps into you like regret. But today, it's just the usual chill. You'll take it. You glance toward the hearth. The fire's gone again. Of course, a few grey logs sit cold and useless, surrounded by a pile of ash that looks more like defeat than fuel. There's no more wood inside. You'll have to go out for more. Again. But that can wait. Just for a moment longer. You're still trying to reattach your soul to your body. And as your knees creak and your back protests, you think about your bed. It's not really a bed at all. There's no mattress, no feather-stuffed sack. Just a pile of straw or hay, flattened by use, darkened with age, maybe mixed with dried leaves and laid directly on the earthen floor. You sometimes throw an old cloth over it to keep the worst of the dirt off your skin, but let's be real. That's more optimism than protection. The cloth is never clean. The straw pokes through, and you've definitely been bitten by something that had more legs than you'd prefer. Still, it's better than the alternative. Just the floor. No padding, just you and the cold ground. And yes, sometimes that's what you choose. Why? Well, for one, straw's not exactly plush. After a few weeks of being slept on and walked over, it loses any bounce it might have had. It shifts into hard clumps and knots, which poke you in places you'd rather not name. You can rearrange it, sure, but unless you've got a fresh pile, and you probably don't, it never quite gets back to comfortable. Sometimes, when it's damp, it smells worse than the pig. So on nights when your back hurts, or the straw's too damp, or your younger sibling peed on it again, the floor starts to look like an upgrade. At least it's flat. At least you know what you're getting. Some people even spread rushes or reeds over the dirt for a bit of cushioning, a medieval version of wall-to-wall carpet. You've seen it in the manor house once. Thicker, greener, even mixed with herbs to mask the smell. Yours? Maybe a handful of dry grass thrown in the corner once a month if you're lucky. But here's the odd part. There's a strange kind of pride in your setup. It's not pretty, but it's yours. You know the softest spots. You know which end of the blanket has the big hole. You've built your little nest from scraps and stubbornness. And no, it's not warm or clean or even remotely appealing, but it's yours. And in winter, ownership feels like luxury. Historically, the idea of a bedroom didn't exist for peasants like you. The whole house was the bedroom, the kitchen, the everything room. There might be a loft for storage, or a lean-to out back, but there are no walls to separate sleep from wakefulness. No privacy, no doors, just space, and not much of it. Most houses were single-room structures, with everyone sleeping in a communal pile or in corners where they fit. Your head might be near the fire one night, and your feet near the door the next. And yes, there are exceptions. Some families have a wooden frame, literally a box with rope stretched across it, topped with straw or leaves. If you're really lucky, you might have a thin wool-stuffed mattress. You've only seen one once, and it looked like heaven. Rumour has it the blacksmith's wife owns one, though she never lets anyone see it. Probably afraid the village will try to steal it, or sleep on it when she's not home. Most folks make do with what they've got. A simple bed frame if they're lucky, a pallet on the floor if they're not, and just the dirt if they're out of both. The important thing is, being near the fire. That's why people often slept on the ground closer to the hearth, even if they had a raised frame. Warmth beats elevation every time. Here's a little oddity for you. In some regions, people believed sleeping too far off the ground let evil spirits get under you. Not exactly scientific, but then again, sleeping on the dirt came with its own sort of protection. Less exposure to wind, fewer creaking boards, and easier to jump up when something goes wrong. Like a wolf, or a fire, or a child rolling into the embers. But the reality is this: dirt is what you know. You were born on it. You walk it, sit on it, sleep on it. It's not clean, it's not comfortable, but it's always there. It's honest. It doesn't pretend to be soft or warm or kind. It just is. You stand slowly, brushing dust off your legs. You feel the tightness in your muscles from sleeping in the same curled-up position every night. The fire is still out. The frost has crept back in. You stretch your arms and feel the draft slice through your tunic like it's not even there. It's going to be another long day. But first, wood. You pull your boots on and head outside. The sky's heavy with clouds, snow probably. Again. You take a deep breath, cough from the cold, and step out into the crunch of frozen ground. Behind you, the house settles. The floor may be hard, the walls may be thin, but you've got a place to come back to tonight. And if the straw's too rough, well, the dirt's always waiting. The smell hits you before you're even fully awake. Something sour, something smoky, something distinctly alive. It's the same smell every morning, every night, every time you roll over and take a deep breath of the air that hangs like a fog in your little one-room world. You lie there a moment longer, eyes closed, breathing it in not because you want to, but because there's no such thing as fresh air in the middle of a medieval winter. It's not just the fire, though that's certainly part of it. Even when it's barely smouldering, the smell of smoke clings to everything. Your cloak, your hair, the very walls of your home. You could walk blindfolded into any house in the village and know immediately whether they've kept their fire going through the night. It's a scent that sinks into the fabric of your life, warmth and survival with a generous dose of eye-watering bitterness. But that's only the top note. The rest of the smell is more complicated. There's the unmistakable tang of sweat. Weeks' worth, layered and fermented in wool, linen, leather. Nobody's bathed recently, and why would they? It's freezing outside, and the idea of stripping down and dousing yourself with river water is one only the recently concussed would entertain. The best you can do is rinse your face, maybe your hands, if someone managed to break the ice in the bucket near the door. Otherwise, you just live in your own skin, marinated in days of labour, stress, and the occasional roll in a pig's sleeping spot. And then there's the livestock. That's not a metaphor. The pig is right there, as always, near the hearth, breathing heavily and radiating a body heat that smells exactly like pig. Funky, earthy, with a generous hint of manure that sticks in the back of your throat. Add in the chicken that roosts by the fire when she can sneak in, and the dog, who has no shame about licking itself right in front of you. And you've got a solid farm-to-blanket scent profile. This is the smell of winter. Not pine trees, not cinnamon, not the crisp, clean bite of snow in the air. No, it's smoke and sweat and straw and wet wool and occasionally something worse. It's the smell of survival in a house that was never meant to be airtight and never quite manages to be open either. You sit up, rubbing your eyes, and the shift in air makes the scent hit a new note. Ah, yes, last night's supper. A turnip stew, reheated 3 times and now clinging to the walls like an unwanted guest. You didn't even eat that much, but the smell is stubborn, mixed now with something faintly rotten. You glance around. Could be the turnips. Could be the pile of laundry in the corner that hasn't been moved in weeks. Could be something died under the straw and no one noticed yet. You gag a little, mostly out of habit, and push the blanket off. It's not just the scent that makes things difficult. It's how it clings. You smell like this. Your clothes do. Your bedding does. If you visit someone else's house, they smell it too. It's a shared understanding, a kind of peasant perfume that says, I am cold, I am poor, and I haven't changed my tunic since the last full moon. And look, people try. Really. You've seen your mother spread dried herbs around the floor. Thyme, sage, if she can get them. She hangs bundles of dried lavender in the rafters sometimes, hoping the sweet scent will overpower the rest. It doesn't. But it helps, a little. At least it gives you something else to smell for a moment before your brain goes back to smoke and onions. Here's a strange little fact. In some areas, folks would hang slices of dried apple or stuff their bedding with mint. Not for any real medical reason, just to make the space feel less oppressive. A small rebellion against the olfactory assault of winter life. You once tried sleeping with a sprig of rosemary tucked into your shirt. It poked your chest all night, and by morning you smelled like a burned roast. Still, points for effort. The floor doesn't help either. Dirt mixed with ash, mixed with whatever got tracked in from outside. It never really gets clean. Sweeping helps a little, but only enough to move the mess from one part of the room to another. The straw soaks up what it can, but then it starts to stink too. You change it out when you can, but straw isn't exactly growing in winter, and you're not about to steal from the animals. They need it more, and then, of course, there's the chamber pot. It sits in the corner innocently enough, a rough clay vessel with a handle, tucked near the wall behind a drape or an old board. It's there because going outside in the dead of night means risking frostbite on parts of your body you'd very much like to keep. But the chamber pot? It comes at a cost. Even when emptied promptly in the morning and someone always forgets, it leaves a scent. Not overwhelming, just a kind of quiet horror lurking beneath everything else, like a ghost that whispers, "You live here." Historians sometimes talk about how people in the Middle Ages were used to the smell. And sure, you build up a tolerance. Your nose stops registering certain things after a while. But that doesn't mean you don't notice. It doesn't mean you like it. You just accept it, because what else are you going to do? There's no perfume, no Febreze, no laundry detergent with a meadow-scented label. Your soap, if you have any, smells like lard and ash. Not exactly refreshing. And yet there's a strange comfort to it all. Because as bad as it smells like life, like people, like animals and cooking and breathing and warmth. It's gross, but it's real. And when the wind blows hard enough to rattle the walls, and the fire sputters in the hearth, and your brother's still coughing in the corner, that smell means you're still here, still surviving. So you pull your cloak over your nose, sigh, and get on with your day. Another cold one, another smoky one, but another one you're alive for, and that's something worth breathing in. The cold is cruelest just before dawn, when even the fire seems to give up. You're lying awake again, stomach growling, the kind of hollow ache that wraps itself around your ribs and refuses to let go. It's been hours since supper, which was never much to begin with. You can't remember the last time you felt truly full. In the winter months, hunger is as constant a companion as the cold, and just as uninvited. You shift under the shared blanket pile trying to will yourself back to sleep, but your body has other plans. The growling turns into a faint cramp. You need something. Anything. Even the thought of warm food is enough to make you sit up, eyes barely open, and glance toward the hearth, where the iron pot still hangs over the ashes. There might be something left. There usually isn't, but hope is free. You crawl over the snoring shapes of your family, mindful of Limbs and the dog, who growls softly when you jostle him. The pot is cold to the touch, its surface covered in a thin film of grease and ash. You lift the lid and peer inside. A slick, dark smear clings to the bottom. No chunks, no broth. Just a stubborn memory of last night's stew. You scrape your finger along the edge and lick it without thinking. It tastes like turnip, soot, and regret. But it's something. Food in winter is its own kind of war. It's not just about finding enough. It's about finding anything warm. You remember the way your mother hoarded onions in the cellar, stringing them up like precious jewels, how the root vegetables were counted and recounted, how the bread was sliced thinner and thinner each day until it was more ceremony than sustenance. In the warmer months, the village feasted. In the cold ones, you learned to stretch a meal until it forgot what flavour was. What do you eat before bed? Whatever's left. If there's bread, it's probably gone stale, but that doesn't matter. Hard bread can be softened in hot broth if you have any. Cheese? Rare, unless someone in the family still has a goat giving milk. Meat? Maybe a scrap of salted pork if it's a special occasion. Usually it's pottage, a slow-boiled stew of grains, vegetables and water, occasionally enriched by a bit of animal fat or bones. The kind of thing that clings to your teeth and fills your belly just enough to help you sleep without dreaming about food. You glance toward the storage jars near the wall. There's a little flour left. Maybe tomorrow your mother will make flat cakes, fried directly on the hearthstone with lard. No sugar, no spices, just flour, fat and salt if you have it. But when eaten hot, they're a kind of magic. They steam in the cold air, and for a few minutes, your hands feel human again. Alcohol makes an appearance sometimes too. Small, deliberate doses. Cider if the apples were good that year. Ale brewed weak and thick. More food than drink. It's not for getting drunk. It's for chasing off the cold, dulling the pain in your joints, quieting the gnaw in your gut before sleep. You've seen your father share a cup with the neighbours, hands trembling from a day of chopping frozen wood, voices low as they pass the mug back and forth, one sip each, enough to warm the chest, not the head. There's a bit of old wisdom floating around the village. A warm belly leads to a warm bed. It's not entirely true, but it feels true. A hot meal makes everything seem a little less impossible. You sleep deeper, your dreams are less cruel, and you don't wake up with the same desperation clawing at your insides. That's why people ration their firewood so carefully, not just for heat, but for cooking, because a cold stew is barely a stew. And cold porridge might as well be mud. A strange detail from another village you heard once. Some folks there heat small flat stones by the fire, wrap them in cloth, and drop them into bowls of grain or broth just before eating. The heat radiates into the food longer, keeping it warm even after the fire dies down. Smart. You've tried it once, but you cracked the bowl. Now your mother won't let you near the nice one. Nice, meaning the one that doesn't leak too much. You've also heard stories about nobles drinking warm spiced wine before bed. Can you imagine that? Spiced wine. As if flavour were a thing you could afford. You've never tasted a spice in your life. Pepper, maybe, if the travelling merchant was feeling generous and your mother had something to trade. But cloves, cinnamon. That might as well be powdered gold. Still, the idea of it makes you pause. Warm wine in a clay cup, the scent of cloves rising with the steam, your belly full and your bed thick with blankets. You close your eyes and try to picture it. But the image won't stick. It feels like a dream someone else had. You open your eyes again and stare at the empty pot. Scholars today like to catalogue what peasants ate in winter. Lists of grains, vegetables, preserved meats. But no list can really explain what hunger does to your mind. How you start watching your neighbours' habits. How every animal becomes both companion and potential meal. How the smell of someone baking barley cakes 2 doors down feels like a cruel joke. Hunger becomes part of your personality. It shapes your movements, your patience, even your sleep. But for all that, you've learnt the tricks. Eat the warmest meal before bed, even if it's small. Wrap your stomach, not just your body, in layers. Chew slowly. Let the warmth linger on your tongue. Breathe the steam. Give your body something to hold on to through the long frozen hours. Tonight, there's not much. A crust of bread, hardened like a rock, softened slightly by dipping it into water warmed over the fire's last breath. You eat it in silence, crouched near the hearth, watching the light fade from red to ash. The bread tastes like ash too, but it fills the hole. Barely. You lie back down in the straw, pulling your cloak around your shoulders, and feel the weight of another winter night settling on your chest. Your stomach is no longer crying, just whispering, and for now, that's enough. Your muscles burn in that dull, deep way that feels earned. You're lying flat on your back, eyes closed, head resting on a tunic bunched into the shape of a pillow, and even though the straw under your body is hard and scratchy, and even though it smells faintly like animal sweat and mildew, you could melt into it. After a day like today, you could sleep on gravel, or ice, or a pile of half-rotten firewood, and still drift off with the smug satisfaction of a noble in a feather bed. Because tonight, your body is too tired to care. This is the best kind of exhaustion, the kind that doesn't ask permission. It owns you. It swallows you whole and tells your brain to shut up because sleep is happening, whether you're ready or not. You didn't get much rest last night, not with your brothers coughing and the fire sputtering out sometime before dawn. And today, chopping wood, fetching water, hauling manure, mending the pen where the cow kicked through the gate. It's a wonder your arms still move. Every joint feels rusted. Every muscle is humming with that strained, overused buzz that only comes from working in the cold, until your limbs forget what warmth ever felt like. but that's exactly how sleep finds. You hear, through labour, hard, relentless, body-grinding work. You don't drift off in silk sheets with your thoughts gently unravelling. You collapse. You earn unconsciousness like you earn your bread, with effort and usually pain. There's a saying in your village, probably older than your great-grandmother, work is the peasant's blanket. And it's not just poetic, it's true. When your body's too spent to tremble, too sore to feel the chill, sleep comes easier. The cold is still there, lurking at your feet and in the back of your throat, but it's muffled. Your body is so focused on recovery that it stops caring about anything else. You remember days when you didn't work much, sick days, snowbound days, the rare moment when chores were light. And those nights, they were colder. You tossed and turned more. Your limbs refused to settle. It was like your body hadn't been emptied enough, hadn't bled out all the tension that kept it clinging to consciousness. You needed to burn calories just to sleep well, and in winter, every bit of that burned energy was a gamble. That's the unspoken truth of peasant sleep. It doesn't come from comfort, it comes from collapse. You stretch your legs under the blanket pile, careful not to nudge the dog too hard. He grumbles in his sleep but doesn't move. Your mother lies near the fire, one hand resting on her belly, her chest rising and falling in slow, even rhythm. Everyone is asleep already, even the pig. The only sound now is the low crackle of firewood and the distant, haunting howl of wind dragging its fingers across the roof. And you? You're slipping under. Finally. The soreness is numbed. The itch of your tunic, the grit of straw poking your calf, the cold spot at the back of your neck, all fading into the background as the exhaustion pulls you deeper. You shift your hips once to settle a little more into the lumpy floor, and that's it. You're gone. But before the last thread of consciousness slips away, your thoughts do one final pass over the day, as they always do. Not a full review, just a blur of images and feelings, your hands on the axe, the way your breath clouded in front of your face, the splash of ice-cold water on your shins as the bucket cracked and spilled, the sound your father made when he dropped the firewood and nearly crushed his foot, the dry humour in his eyes afterward like, of course, and your own laughter, short, rough, but real. That kind of shared work ties everyone together, even if no one talks about it. You may sleep next to someone out of necessity, but you suffer beside them by choice, or at least shared circumstance. And that makes the blanket warmer. You don't love your brother more just because he spent all day lugging fence posts, but you do feel the rhythm of his exhaustion in sync with yours. You both collapse into the same night, for the same reasons. That's something. That's community. Oddly enough, historians tend to gloss over this part. They talk about diet, housing, mortality rates, but not the way that constant physical labour shaped the quality of sleep. Not just the amount, but the texture of it. Peasant sleep, especially in winter, wasn't gentle. It was heavy. Deadweight sleep. Dreamless most nights. When you worked from before sunrise to long after sunset, hauling, digging, sawing, kneading, and enduring cold that bit through bone, your dreams had no room to play. Your body simply shut down. And sure, there are fringe theories, some even suggesting that exhaustion like this reduced cognitive function over time, that the constant physical strain without proper recovery or nutrition led to mental fog, even hallucinations. Maybe that's true, but it doesn't change the fact that, in the moment, it feels like a gift. Sleep isn't elusive, it's inevitable. Still, there's a cost. You've seen it in the stooped backs of men barely into their 30s, in the twisted hands of women who can't straighten their fingers, in the broken teeth and scarred knuckles and the limp that never quite went away after that fall on the icy hill. This kind of work pays your body back in installments, with interest. By 40, most people you know are worn out. By 50, they're ancient, if they're even alive. But that's tomorrow's problem. Tonight you're warm enough, barely. Full enough, barely. And exhausted enough to sleep like you've been buried in straw. A weird fact. Some medieval people believed that sleeping too hard left you vulnerable to evil spirits. That's why some wore charms to bed or muttered prayers as they drifted off, to keep their soul tethered while the body was elsewhere. You've never worn a charm. You tried praying for protection once, but honestly, your brain never makes it past amen before you're out cold. Tonight, like most nights, you'll fall asleep mid-thought, mid-breath, mid-sentence in your head. There's no ceremony, no winding down, just the quiet crush of fatigue folding over you like the last page of a long story. And as you slip fully into the dark, muscles finally still, firelight flickering across the floor, you know this. You'll wake up sore. You'll wake up cold. But at least you'll wake up. Because sleep didn't save you. You saved you. You're not the first one to wake up this morning. It's the baby, of course, wailing again. His little cries cut through the haze of sleep like a knife through snow crust, sharp and immediate. You flinch as your eyelids crack open, your body still leaden from the night before. The cold hasn't left. Not that it ever really does. It just hides under the fire's glow for a little while, waiting for the embers to die down before it seeps back into your bones like some ancient curse. Your mother's already moving, shuffling toward the baby's corner of the room, unwrapping him from his cocoon of cloth and cradling him against her chest. She whispers something you can't hear, probably the same lullaby she's been using for years, soft and fraying like everything else in the house. The child cries anyway. Of course he does. The air is freezing, his face is red and blotchy, and his tiny fists are curled in protest at the very idea of being born into this. You sit up slowly, your own joints groaning in quiet sympathy. And as you do, it strikes you, again, just how brutal this season is on children. Babies don't sleep easily in winter, not when the air stings their faces and their blankets are too thin, not when the fire goes out before dawn and no one has enough fuel to keep it going overnight. You remember what it was like when your sister was born, how she screamed and wailed through those first nights, her nose crusted with frost and her toes icy, even wrapped in wool. How your mother would take her under the covers and hold her to her own bare skin just to warm her up, skin to skin. That's what keeps a baby alive when everything else fails. And this one, he's barely 3 months old, a mid-autumn baby, born just as the last apples fell and the frost began creeping in under the door. You remember the night it happened, how the women rushed in with boiled cloths and hot water, how the fire roared and the rest of you were sent outside to give space, even if it meant freezing your toes off. You stood near the barn, listening through the walls, the screams, then the silence, then the cry. That tiny, angry, defiant cry that meant he'd made it, at least for now. But winter is not kind to the little ones. Every morning feels like a head count. You wake up, glance around the room, and breathe easier only when every small body is accounted for and breathing, still here. There are no guarantees. You know families who've buried more than one child before spring. Sometimes it's sickness, sometimes the cold, sometimes it's both, tangled together, impossible to tell which came first. Keeping a child warm in a medieval winter is more art than science. You wrap them in layers, wool, linen, whatever scraps you can find. You tuck them against the bodies of the living as close to the fire as you dare. Some parents sleep with their infants under their cloaks, their arms curved protectively around them through the night. It's safer than letting them sleep alone, but it comes with its own risks. You've heard stories, whispers really, of babies smothered accidentally in the dark, their mothers too exhausted to notice. No one says it outright, but everyone knows. It happens. Still, what choice do you have? There's no cradle, no separate room, no nursery with painted stars on the ceiling. Just this one room, this one fire, and the same blankets you've been sleeping under since before you had teeth. You glance over now at your mother and the baby. She's rocking him gently near the fire, her own cloak draped around both of them. The flames paint her face in soft orange light, and, for a moment, you're struck by the sheer quiet strength of her. Not noble strength, not the kind written about in songs. Just the strength of someone who gets up every morning and does what has to be done, even when her back aches and her milk is running low and the woodpile is vanishing one stick at a time. You crawl over, take a seat beside her, and she doesn't say anything. She just shifts slightly so you can help hold the baby's head. His skin is warm now, his breathing slower. He's already half asleep again, mouth open, his tiny hand gripping the edge of your sleeve. It's absurd, really, how something so small can need so much. You've seen older kids, 4, 5 years old, hardened already by a few winters of this. They sleep in a line, curled around each other like a litter of pups, dressed in oversized clothes and grimy wool socks that fall off in the night. They don't cry anymore. They know better. Crying doesn't warm you. Crying just gets you told to hush so everyone else can rest. And the babies that don't make it, there are no proper cemeteries for peasants. Just a patch of earth behind the chapel, or a corner of the fields where the soil isn't too frozen to dig. You remember helping once. Quiet, heavy shovels breaking through icy ground while the mother wept into her shawl. No marker, just memory and silence. Scholars today often talk about high infant mortality rates in the Middle Ages, quoting numbers and percentages like they're facts on a chalkboard. But you live the reality of those numbers. Each one was a name, a face, a hope, a space beside the fire, a set of swaddling cloths reused too soon. But there are joys too. The baby in your arms. He blinks up at you suddenly, wide-eyed, and gurgles. It's not a laugh exactly, but it's close enough to make your heart flinch. You smile, just barely. He's warm. He's alive. And tonight, that's enough. A quirky bit of history. In some parts of Europe, people believed putting a knife or iron nail near a sleeping baby would protect them from evil spirits in the night. Not to hurt them, of course, just as a charm, a kind of anti-demon security system. Your family doesn't bother with that. You rely on warmth, on skin, on the unspoken promise that no child sleeps alone, not while someone else has breath and body heat to share. Eventually, you hand him back to your mother and pull your cloak tighter, returning to your straw bed. He settles against her chest, a sigh escaping both of them at the same time. The fire crackles softly. The rest of the house stirs, and morning begins again in that quiet, relentless way it always does. You lie back down and close your eyes. The baby is still breathing, the fire is still lit, and winter hasn't won. Not yet. The sun has long since set, and though the hearth fire still flickers, the corners of the room are swallowed in a thick, soupy darkness. It's the kind of dark that doesn't just obscure, it presses, against your eyes, against your chest, against your thoughts. You're used to it by now, but that doesn't make it easier. Nights in the Middle Ages aren't just cold, they're long, and in winter, they're long and haunted. You're wrapped in your usual nest of rags and cloaks, your breath fogging up the air beneath the covers. Everyone else has begun to settle into that first sleep. A few snores rise and fall like soft waves. The pig is already snuffling near the fire, curled into herself like a hairy loaf of bread. The dog lets out the occasional twitch or grunt from wherever he's curled, dreaming of chasing geese or digging up bones. The world is quiet. Too quiet. Your mind, though, it's not resting yet. It's drifting in the grey space between waking and sleep, where thoughts grow long shadows, and every creak of the roof sounds like footsteps. You shift slightly, pulling your cloak tighter around your chin, and you remember what night used to mean, before you got used to pretending not to care. Because in your village, after sundown, the world doesn't just go still. It changes. Everyone knows that. Everyone pretends they don't believe it anymore, but they still cross themselves when they hear an owl. They still whisper prayers when the wind whistles under the door. They still toss salt on the threshold and leave an iron key hanging above the cradle, just in case. See, darkness here isn't just the absence of light, it's the presence of something else. The old stories say that winter nights are the domain of spirits, restless souls, witches, goblins, fairies, with sharp teeth and worse manners. Some say the dead walk at night during the longest weeks of winter, slipping in through doorways left ajar, drawn to the heat of the hearth and the scent of the living. You know it's probably nonsense. But when the fire burns low and the silence stretches long, your imagination starts walking ahead of you. You hear it now, a soft thump from the rafters. Just the house settling? Probably. Or a rat. Or the wind. But your body tenses anyway, because somewhere in your memory your grandmother's voice still echoes. Don't whistle after dark. Don't open the door for voices you don't recognize. And never, never look into the mirror by firelight. That's when they come through. You don't even have a mirror, but you still find yourself glancing at the iron ladle hanging by the hearth. It's shiny enough to reflect. Not clearly, but enough. You avoid it, just in case. Beside you, your sister mumbles something in her sleep. A name, maybe, or just gibberish. Either way, your heart gives a little jump. You tell yourself it's fine. She's dreaming, that's all. But then you remember the tale of the shepherd's wife, who began speaking strange words in her sleep one winter and never woke again. The village priest said it was a demon. Others said she ate mouldy bread and had a fever. Both explanations feel equally believable when the fire is low and the dark keeps listening. A quirky fact, since we're on the subject. Many medieval households believed in house spirits, little creatures or ghosts that lived in the corners of the home and watched over the family. In exchange for protection, you'd leave them a bit of food, a crust of bread, a splash of milk. Forget to feed them, though. They'd turn spiteful, sour the milk, hide your tools, make the baby cry through the night. You don't really believe in them, but there's still an old crust tucked in the corner by the door. You pretend it's for the dog. Everyone knows it isn't. And then there's the real fear. Not ghosts, not spirits, but people. Because not every danger is made of mist and whispers. In winter, when food runs low and tempers get sharp, a neighbour can become something darker. You've heard stories. Houses robbed in the middle of the night. Families waking to find their stew pot gone, their firewood missing. A blanket pulled off while they slept. A goat slit at the throat for its meat. In the hunger season, even a friend might turn thief. That's why you bolt the door every night. Not that the bolt is much. A crooked piece of wood wedged into a notch. It wouldn't stop a determined man, but it makes a sound when it's moved, and sometimes that's enough. There's an axe near the hearth, dull but heavy. You all know where it is. You all pretend not to think about why. Scholars debate just how seriously medieval people took their nighttime superstitions. Some argue it was all just folklore, stories told to scare children into staying indoors after dark. Others insist it ran deeper, that belief in the supernatural-shaped daily routines, sleeping habits, and even the way houses were built. Low doors, iron hinges, sprigs of herbs hung from rafters. You know what you believe? That no one does anything for no reason when they live this close to death. You shift again, eyes open, staring into the fire's dying glow. The shadows dance against the ceiling. You tell yourself it's nothing, that no spirits walk tonight, that the door is locked, that your family is safe. But still, you pull your blanket a little higher, just a little. Eventually your breathing slows, the thoughts retreat, the fire burns itself down to an orange wink, and the dark remains, thick and unmoving, draped across the room like a second ceiling. But still, you sleep. Not because you're unafraid, but because you're tired, and because in this world, fear is just another thing you sleep through. You wake before dawn to the low murmur of prayer. At first it blends into the sighs and rustles of sleeping bodies, but then it sharpens, soft Latin syllables whispered with cracked lips and half-frozen breath. It's your father. He's kneeling by the hearth, shoulders hunched, hands clasped, the firelight painting deep shadows under his eyes. You know the prayer by heart. You've heard it 100 times. A plea for protection, for warmth, for mercy. For one more day. You lie still, pretending to sleep, not out of disrespect, but because the moment feels private, one of the few in this cramped life that still belongs to one person at a time. His voice is barely audible, drowned out by the crackle of the fire and the occasional snore from the pig. But the words don't matter so much as the tone. It's not hopeful, not desperate. It's routine, like stoking the fire or stuffing straw in the cracks. Just another layer of defense against the cold and the silence and whatever else might be listening in the dark. Prayer is a constant here, not loud or showy, no choirs, no stained glass windows or golden crosses, just muttered lines, half-remembered hymns, and the sign of the cross traced into the air before sleep. It's stitched into the rhythms of your day the way hunger is, the way cold is. You might not always mean it, you don't always feel it, but you do it anyway, because maybe God is listening, or maybe it just helps to feel like someone is. You finally sit up quietly, so as not to disturb the little warmth you've built under your blanket. The cold hits you immediately, sharp and wet in your chest. The fire must have died down during the night again. Only the faintest red glows from under the blackened logs. You rub your hands together and glance around. Most of your family are still asleep, curled into themselves like wilted leaves. Your mother lies on her side, the baby nestled against her belly. His breath fogs in tiny puffs against her skin. He's made it through another night. That makes 3 weeks in a row. A good sign. A small miracle, in fact. And there are moments when you wonder if the prayers matter. If the little rituals make a difference. Not just the prayers to God, but the ones to saints, to the Virgin, to whatever local holy figure has a shrine nearby. In your village, people still whisper the name of a long-dead monk who supposedly cured frostbite with a touch and healed fevers with snowmelt. There's a carved figure of him in the chapel. You've seen old women light candles beneath it and mutter petitions with such intensity it felt like the air bent around them. There's a fine line between piety and superstition here, and most people dance across it without a second thought. You've seen men sprinkle holy water on their tools before the harvest, and women hide scraps of blessed bread in the corners of the house to keep sickness out. Your grandmother used to leave a crust on the windowsill for St. Mary to nibble, as if that tiny offering might buy you a warmer night. You thought it was silly as a child. Now, you're not so sure, because in a place like this you need more than firewood and wool to make it through the winter. You need hope, even the practical kind that comes wrapped in the language of the sacred. The cold is relentless, the hunger gnaws, the darkness feels alive, and no one ever says it out loud, but everyone is afraid. Afraid of illness, of starvation, of dying in the night and not being found until morning. So you pray. Because what else can you do? And for some, prayer isn't just hope, it's duty. Your father believes that keeping the house protected isn't just about patching the roof and chopping wood. It's about guarding the soul. He prays for everyone, even the animals. He says bedtime prayers with the baby when he's fussy, whispering Latin over his tiny twitching hands. He blesses the bread before you eat, and when the fire goes out, he makes the sign of the cross before lighting it again. Maybe it's just habit. Maybe it's armor. There's something to be said for structure too. You don't have clocks. You don't have alarms. Time is fluid, shaped by the light and your hunger. But prayer anchors it. Morning, evening, meal, sleep. Even in the middle of the night, when everyone else is asleep, your father sometimes wakes to pray in the darkness. Monks in their monasteries rise at these same hours. Matins, lords, the divine office. They do it by candlelight, in stone rooms filled with echoing chants. You do it by ember light, in a room filled with sleeping pigs and snoring children. But the intent is the same. Not everyone in the village is devout, of course. You know people who go to church more out of habit than belief. And when winter gets particularly cruel, when someone dies, or the crop fails, or the baby coughs for 3 days without pause, you can see it in their eyes. The doubt, the anger, the temptation to curse instead of pray. There's a man down the lane who hasn't been to Mass in months. Ever since his wife passed in childbirth, he's turned bitter and quiet, muttering dark things under his breath. They say he burned his prayer book, that he threw holy water into the snow and told God to come take him too if he was so eager. You've seen him standing in his doorway at dusk, staring at the sky like he's daring it to strike him down. So far nothing has. And then there are the quiet ones, the ones like your mother, who pray without sound, without movement, without anyone knowing. She never talks about her faith, but you've seen her light a candle with shaking fingers. You've seen her hold her breath beside the crib. You've seen her draw a cross in the steam on the window. You pull your blanket around your shoulders and step quietly toward the hearth. Your father finishes his prayer, kisses his fingers, and touches them to the wood. Then he stands, knees cracking, and nods to you. No words, just a look that says, "Your turn now." So you kneel where he was, in the spot warmed by his breath, and you do what he did. Not because you feel particularly holy, not because you're certain anyone's listening, but because this is how you start the day. Because if something out there is watching, you want them to know you're still here, still hoping, still holding on, still asking. The cold is different during festivals. Not gone, never gone, but pushed back just far enough that you forget how hard your toes are biting inside your boots, how stiff your fingers are, how badly the wind wants inside your sleeves. There's too much noise, too much smoke, too much laughter for the chill to win outright. That's how it works, every winter. Misery laced with celebration, like someone dropped a spoonful of honey in your bowl of cold porridge and told you to pretend it was a feast. It's the feast of St. Stephen today, or maybe the turning of the year, depends who you ask. Doesn't matter. What matters is that the whole village is gathered outside, stamping feet, clapping hands, trying to pretend that frost on their eyebrows isn't a problem. You're wrapped in your heaviest cloak, a bit of rag around your neck and a strip of felt tucked in your boots where the leather split weeks ago. You look ridiculous, but so does everyone else. One man's wearing 2 hats, and a child is practically mummified in a too large tunic that hangs past her knees, like she robbed a particularly stylish scarecrow. There's music, sort of. A stringed instrument that sounds like it's been left out in the rain for a decade. A pipe that keeps squealing every few notes, but it's enough. Enough for the baker's sons to spin each other in circles. Enough for the women to clap along. Enough for your blood to forget just for a few minutes that it's been moving like molasses through your veins since November. Someone passes you a cup. Warm cider. Or what used to be cider. It's mostly just fermented and full of unexpected grit, but it's hot and it kicks like a mule. You take a sip, wince, and feel your face flush from more than just embarrassment. It burns all the way down. A good burn. This is what winter celebration looks like. Not opulence, not glittering feasts or gilded halls, but survival with flair. Every family has brought something. Dried apples, stale bread revived with a bit of lard, a sliver of cheese tucked into a cloth like it's a crown jewel. You contributed a small jar of pickled something, possibly turnip, possibly mistake, that your mother insisted was just the thing for a gathering. People pick at it. Politely, you notice no one comes back for seconds. At the edge of the crowd, the priest blesses the food. He wears extra robes today, layers of wool over linen, and his beard is full of icicles. He raises a hand and mumbles a prayer over the gathering. You can't hear half of it, but you murmur Amen like everyone else. Then he pulls out a candle, lights it with great ceremony from a lantern kept near his chest, and holds it high. For light in the dark months, he says, and everyone cheers, a bit too loudly. Some are drunk already, probably the guy with 2 hats. Later, as the crowd thins and people begin to trickle back to their homes, bellies not quite full, limbs stiff from standing on frozen ground, but spirits undeniably higher. You linger by the dying bonfire in the centre of the square. The flames snap and dance, rising defiantly into the cold sky. Around you, kids throw snowballs. An old woman hums a song you almost recognise. Someone's singing off-key behind the bakery, and you think for a moment how strange it is that people even try to celebrate during winter. Why not just hibernate? Give in? Crawl into the straw and wake up in May? But then you realise that's exactly the point. These festivals aren't about joy, they're about defiance. You don't dance because you're warm. You dance because you're cold and tired and hungry and angry that the sun sets before supper. You dance because the alternative is letting the season win. You head home eventually, cheeks raw, legs sore, the cider a dim fire in your stomach. Your house is dark when you enter, the embers in the hearth barely breathing. You stir them gently, feed them with a scrap of wood. Slowly the orange glow returns, licking the edges of the iron pot still hanging from its hook. You pull off your outer layer, shake off the snow, and settle down beside the fire. The rest of the family begins trickling in. Your mother carries what's left of the pickled mystery. Your father's got a slice of dark bread he must have bartered for. Your siblings are laughing about something, a game played with snow and a very unfortunate goat. Even the baby is smiling, his cheeks red from the cold but eyes wide and bright. The warmth of the crowd has followed you all home like smoke in your clothes. As everyone settles into their usual spots, your mother pulls the family close and begins humming. Not a song of praise, not a church hymn, just a tune, wordless, old, probably older than the village itself. You've heard it every winter. The melody drifts through the air, twining with the rising heat and the crackling of the fire. You rest your head on your arms, watching the shadows dance across the thatched ceiling. A curious historical footnote. Some winter festivals in rural communities were deliberately loud. Bells, drums, shouting through the streets, not just for fun, but to scare away spirits. Noise as armour, joy as protest. The idea being, if the darkness brings monsters, drown them out with laughter. And that's what tonight is, really. Not comfort, not safety, but noise in the face of the void. Music against silence, firelight against the eternal dark pressing in from every corner. You drift off with that thought clinging to your skin like the cider's warmth. Outside, the wind howls, the cold waits, but inside, for just a little longer, there's light, there's laughter, and that, more than anything, keeps you alive. There's no rooster this morning. He froze solid 2 nights ago. You found him yesterday, tipped over like a broken weather vane, 1 foot in the air and eyes closed as if he just gave up mid-cluck. He hadn't been crowing much anyway, and now the mornings arrive without ceremony, just darkness giving way to a dull grey sky, and the feeling that something is slightly less dead than it was an hour ago. You sit up slowly, head pounding from yesterday's cider, or maybe just the lack of food. Around you, the others are starting to stir. Your sister groans and curls deeper into the cloak you both share. The baby's already fussing. Your mother, of course, is up. She always is. You don't know if she ever really sleeps, or if she just lies there with her eyes closed waiting for everyone else to need something. The air is cold enough that it stings your throat to breathe. You check the hearth, embers only. You poke them with a stick, hopeful, and a few sparks leap up like startled mice. Good. You feed it slowly, bark scraps, a sliver of kindling, and then one of the few remaining logs. Watching it catch is like watching the sun rise. Fire is your clock here. When it lives, so do you. Speaking of clocks, you don't have one. No one you know does. Time is marked by the fire, by the bell at the chapel, by the position of the sun, when it bothers to show up. In winter, it's guesswork. You get up when it feels like you can't stay in bed anymore, and you go to sleep when the fire burns low and you've run out of reasons to keep your eyes open. This morning, the light is dull and weak. It could be early. It could be nearly midday. Hard to tell under the thick winter cloud cover. No one really cares. The animals need feeding. The children need food. The water bucket's frozen again, and someone's got to go break the ice. You look around and realise, of course, that someone is probably going to be you. There's a rhythm to life here, one not governed by minutes and seconds, but by necessity. You sleep when you can, wake when you must. No alarms, no bells in your ear, just the burning ache in your stomach, the baby's cry, or the cold pressing in like a hand against your back. People today worry about sleep cycles and circadian rhythms, but you? You don't get the luxury of caring. You sleep like a stone or not at all. Some nights it's 6 hours, some nights it's 3. Sometimes you wake and stay awake for hours staring at the rafters, listening to your father snore and the fire crack and the wind scratch at the door like it wants inside. Scholars now write about this, how in the Middle Ages people didn't sleep the way modern folk do. It wasn't a straight shot from dusk till dawn. It was broken, segmented. You'd have a first sleep, wake for an hour or 2, then go into your second sleep. Maybe you'd pray. Maybe you'd talk. Some people even use that time to, well, get familiar with their spouses. Quietly, under the blankets, while the rest of the family snored feet away. You don't talk about that part, of course, but you know it happens. Sometimes the pile of bodies shifts in the dark, not for warmth, but for something else. There's no privacy here, only shadows and silence and the mutual understanding that what happens under the blanket stays under the blanket. You step outside with the bucket, boots crunching into last night's snow, your breath fogging thick in the morning air. The village is quiet. A thin plume of smoke rises from each thatched roof. Everyone's doing the same thing you are, trying to survive one more day. You pass your neighbour's house and nod to the old man stacking firewood, his hands red and cracked, knuckles swollen like knots. He nods back, no words needed. Back inside, the fire is brighter now, casting that golden glow that makes the room feel less like a tomb. Your mother is stirring a pot of something, oats maybe, or barley if someone traded well. You take your place by the fire, bowl in hand, and begin to eat slowly, savouring every hot, bland bite. The food is barely flavoured, but it's warm, and in winter, warm is everything. You sit in silence watching the flame. You can feel the day stretching ahead already. More firewood to gather, clothes to mend, a fence that needs fixing. Maybe someone will stop by, maybe not. The days are slow here, but they have a weight to them. You feel the hours like stones in your pockets, and yet somehow the rhythm works. You're not tied to a schedule, but to survival. Your body wakes when it has to, sleeps when it's allowed. Sometimes, when the nights are mild, you actually dream. Not often, but sometimes. And in those dreams, you're never cold. Here's a strange, lovely detail. Some monks, in faraway monasteries you've only heard about, kept meticulous time even in winter. They rose at exact hours to pray, breaking their sleep with bells and chants. Their days were carved into prayers, work and sleep like slices of bread. You wonder if they felt the same dull ache you do, waking in the cold and whispering hymns in the dark. Probably. Only difference is they had stone walls and quiet. You have a pig snoring by the hearth, and someone always stealing your blanket. You finish your food, set your bowl down, and stretch your arms toward the fire. The baby is cooing now, eyes wide and curious, staring at the flames like they hold answers. Maybe they do. You hope he never knows the cold the way you do, but you also know he will. Still, for now, the house is quiet. The fire is warm, and the day moves forward, not on a clock, but on your terms, breath by breath, flame by flame. And when night falls again, and it always does, you'll sleep when your body says so, and you'll wake up the same way. No alarm needed. Tonight, sleep won't come easy. You're curled into your usual spot, cloak pulled up to your chin, 2 layers of rags under your back, and a third shoved behind your neck in a vague approximation of a pillow. The fire is low, just embers now, pulsing faintly like a sleeping animal. The room is quiet except for the baby's occasional wet snore and your father's rhythmic breath, so steady it almost puts you under. Almost. But your mind won't stop tonight. It's pacing, tripping over its own thoughts, circling the same questions again and again like a dog trying to lie down but never quite settling. You can feel it in your chest, that thrum of something not right. Not panic exactly, just restlessness. Too much quiet, too much thinking. You roll onto your side, then your back, then your stomach. Nothing helps. Every time you move, the straw under you shifts with a whisper of complaint, and you remember exactly why you don't sleep well unless your body's already half dead from work. Tonight, the work wasn't enough. You're exhausted, yes, but mentally, you're wide awake. You stare up at the ceiling, bare beams strung with drying herbs, your mother's extra cooking pots, a few strings of garlic dangling like sleepy bats. The herbs rustle faintly in a draught you didn't notice earlier. There's something about the movement, the quiet creak of the rafters, that scratches at the edges of your calm, makes your skin prickle. Sometimes you wonder if this is just what winter does, turns your mind in on itself. When the days are too short, and the nights are too long, and the same walls press in on you for weeks at a time, you start to feel wrong, like a violin string pulled too tight. You've seen it in others too, the way your sister snapped at you over a crust of bread, the way your neighbour stood outside his house for an hour staring at nothing, his shirt open in the snow. People call it winter madness. Not in a dramatic way, but with a shrug like it's the flu. Just another seasonal affliction. Some say it's caused by cabin fever, too many bodies in too small a space. Others say it's the lack of sunlight. The short days press on your skull like a vice, and some believe the long nights let too many bad thoughts in. That spirits whisper more when the world is cold and silent. You're not sure who's right. Maybe everyone. You try closing your eyes. That lasts all of 30 seconds. You open them again and sigh, breath curling in the cold air. The fire needs tending, but you don't want to move. The cold floor is a threat you're not ready to face yet. So you lie still, eyes open, listening. There's a creak from the far end of the room. Probably the dog, or your brother shifting. But still, you don't like it. That's the thing about the night. It magnifies everything. Every tiny sound becomes a mystery. Every draft becomes a warning. Your thoughts start wearing cloaks and masks, sneaking around in the corners of your mind, whispering fears you didn't invite. Did you chop enough wood for tomorrow? Did you feed the pig? Did you remember to check the roof for ice build-up? Is the baby still breathing? Is that the wind? You sit up slowly, blanket falling from your shoulders, and tiptoe to the hearth. The floor is biting cold even through your socks, and you have to fight the instinct to hiss through your teeth. You crouch beside the fire, using your fingers to dig through the ash. uncovering a few stubborn embers still glowing like buried treasure. You add a few dry twigs, blow gently, flame, small, uncertain, but alive. There's something hypnotic about fire at night, maybe even sacred, the way it glows in the darkness, chasing back the void one flicker at a time. You sit cross-legged by it now, letting the warmth crawl across your hands, up your forearms, into your chest. The others are still asleep. The baby stirs, then settles again. Your mother murmurs something unintelligible and turns in her sleep. And you stay there, in the dark, staring into the fire like it has answers. Another odd fact for you. Some medieval people believed insomnia was a punishment from God, a sign that you'd sinned and needed to reflect. Others thought it was a sign that something wanted you awake, spirits, ancestors, demons. There are stories of people kept from sleep for nights at a time, their minds unravelling like spun thread. Of course, modern scholars would tell you it was stress, malnutrition, bad bedding, probably some combination of all three. You poke the fire again, watching the sparks leap, and you think about how long the night feels when your brain won't shut off, when there's no moonlight, no noise outside, and even the animals are asleep. You're the only one awake in the world, or so it feels. The weight of that can be enormous, or comforting. You haven't decided which. Eventually, after what feels like an hour, you lie back down. Not in your usual spot, but closer to the fire, just a few feet away from the embers. You pull the blanket around your shoulders again, tuck your knees into your chest, and close your eyes. And this time, maybe because of the warmth, or the silence, or the rhythm of your own breathing, you drift. Not quickly, not all at once, but slowly, like sinking through a still pond. You fall past the worries, past the questions, past the shape of your own thoughts, into a place that's not warm, but no longer cold, not silent, but no longer loud, not safe, but no longer afraid. Sleep at last. The fire still burns behind your closed eyes, and outside the wind keeps howling, but you no longer hear it. Your dreams last night were strange, warped and too vivid, the kind that linger like smoke when you wake. You're trudging through snow that keeps rising higher with every step, your arms full of firewood that suddenly turn to water, dripping through your fingers. Someone calls your name, but their voice echoes like it's bouncing off the inside of a barrel. And then there's a face, familiar, laughing, but wrong somehow, like it's been carved out of wax and left too close to the hearth. You can't say what it means, only that you didn't like it. You wake up feeling more tired than when you fell asleep. The fire is nearly out again, just a rim of orange barely visible under a mound of ash. You're cold. Your breath fogs the air above you. The blanket you fell asleep under is halfway across the room, probably stolen in the night by your sister or the dog. They do that. No remorse. You've retaliated more than once. It's a low-stakes war of shifting layers. One cloak passed back and forth like a kingdom nobody actually owns. You sit up, stretch, and wince as your back cracks in 3 different places. That's another winter gift. Your joints are slowly turning into furniture. It's not even that you're old. You're not. But in the Middle Ages, young is a flexible concept. You've known people with grey hair before they turn 25. Hard living will do that to a person. Your mother is already up, kneeling near the hearth with her hands wrapped in cloth as she works the fire back to life. She glances over at you but doesn't speak. She's tired too. The baby kept everyone up last night, fussing and crying, little face red and angry, teething probably, or maybe just cold. Everything is probably in winter. No one really knows. You guess. You cope. You survive. You help with the fire, feeding it bark and blowing gently until the flames lick the sides of the blackened pot again. The water inside starts to steam, and that steam is a small, glorious thing, proof that heat still exists in the world. While it warms, you go outside for more wood. The door groans when you push it open, and a fresh gust of wind slaps your face like a wet glove. Outside, the world is locked in frost. The snow is thin but hard, crusted over from days of melting and refreezing. It cracks under your boots. The sky is the colour of old tin. You pass the neighbour's house and nod to the boy outside trying to thaw a rope that's frozen stiff. He grins like it's a game. His nose is bright red and dripping. By the time you haul the armload of logs inside, your fingers are numb. You shake the snow from your shoulders and crouch by the fire again, thankful for the sting of returning warmth. Breakfast is thin oat porridge today, a little scorched at the bottom of the pot but still steaming. You eat it slowly, savouring each spoonful like it's some royal delicacy. You know it's just oats and water and salt, but when it's warm and you're not, it might as well be a feast. And here's the thing people forget. Warmth isn't just about comfort. It's currency. It's health. It's sanity. And it's fleeting. One bad night without it, and your joints stiffen. Your chest aches. Your thoughts get slow and foggy. You've heard stories of people who simply didn't wake up. Not sick. Not injured. Just cold and tired and done. You remember the winter 3 years ago, when the snow didn't melt until April, when firewood ran out by February, and you spent nights pressed so tightly against your siblings that you could feel their bones. Your breath iced on the wall behind you. One of the elderly neighbours didn't make it. She'd gone to bed alone, wrapped in every piece of clothing she owned, and never opened her eyes again. The priest called it natural causes. You called it cold. You've never forgotten. Today is laundry day, which in winter is a kind of joke. There's no soap left, so everything gets rinsed in the river or in melted snow, then hung indoors, where it freezes anyway. Clothes dry, stiff as bark. Your shirt will go back on your body, still damp in the seams, still rough with yesterday's sweat. It smells faintly of smoke, sour milk, and something vaguely livestock. You're used to it. Everyone smells the same. Clean is relative here. You hang the clothes near the hearth, where they might absorb a little warmth by evening. The smoke in the room curls lazily toward the ceiling, and you're starting to feel that heaviness behind your eyes again, the pull of the bad sleep from last night. You sit on the edge of your straw pallet, elbows on your knees, and zone out for a few minutes staring at the fire. Another fun historical oddity. People used to believe that dreams could be messages, warnings or omens or even prophecies. Some said the devil spoke through them. Others thought dreams were just leftover thoughts your soul sifted through after dark. You don't believe in dream omens exactly, but that one last night, walking through endless snow, felt a little too real. Like your mind was trying to warn you of something, or maybe just processing another endless winter day. Your father comes in dragging a broken fence post and grumbles something about the cow getting out again. You nod, rise, and go to help. There's no ceremony, no, how did you sleep? No, you look tired. Just the assumption that everyone's tired all the time and sleep is something you grab in small, uneven bites. You wonder sometimes what it would be like to wake up well rested. To have a real bed, a private space, a night uninterrupted by crying or wind or the desperate need to tend the fire at 3 a.m. You imagine a feather mattress, blankets thick enough to smother the cold, a window sealed against the wind. You've heard the nobles have that they sleep long into the morning, cushioned and pampered, their rooms warmed by roaring fires that never go out, that they wake slowly, in silence, no one breathing down their neck, no livestock snorting beside them. You wonder if that's true, or just another fantasy passed around to make the rest of you feel worse about your lives. Either way, it's not for you. You've got work to do, a fence to repair, a pig that probably got into something it shouldn't, and another night to get through. Because winter doesn't care if you slept badly. It doesn't wait for you to catch up. It just keeps coming. Cold and patient. One long night stretched over weeks and weeks and weeks. And you keep surviving it. One brittle morning at a time. You don't notice the first sign. Not right away. It's just a tickle at the back of your throat, too light to matter, like breathing in ash or dry hay. You cough once, shake it off, and keep hauling the bucket of water back from the half-frozen stream. Nothing serious. Probably just the cold. You tell yourself that over and over, even as your head starts to feel heavy, and the chill seems to soak deeper than usual into your skin, lingering in the joints, behind your eyes. It's nothing. Just tired. Just winter. But by evening something's wrong. The fire feels dimmer. Your legs ache, your hands shake, and that cough, it won't stop now. Dry, hacking, sharp as frostbite. You press a hand to your chest. There's a weight there. Not pain exactly, just pressure. like someone stacked a wet blanket on top of your lungs and asked you to pretend nothing's different. You sit down slowly beside the fire, legs giving a little under you, and your mother notices. She's stirring the pot, but her eyes flick over and narrow. "You cold?" she asks. You nod, but it's not quite that. Not just cold, it's something else. She reaches out, lays a hand on your forehead, and her expression tightens. She doesn't say the word, doesn't have to. Everyone knows what fever feels like, especially in winter. There's a moment of stillness, the kind that falls when everyone else in the room realizes at the same time. Your father shifts in his seat. Your sister pulls the baby closer. Even the dog seems to shrink a little into the shadows. Sickness in winter is more than unwelcome. It's dangerous. There's no medicine, no spare bed, no nursemaid or healer to call in the middle of the night. There's only what you have. A hearth, a pile of rags, and a handful of boiled herbs that taste like the bottom of a boot. Your mother moves quickly, setting the pot aside and bundling you in a thicker blanket. She mixes something in a wooden cup, infusion of yarrow probably, or maybe elder. Bitter, either way. You drink because she tells you to. The heat burns your tongue, your stomach lurches. This is how it begins. One cough, one fever, and then it's a race against the cold. The irony is that the one thing you need to fight illness, warmth, is also the thing you're always running out of. The fire is small tonight, the woodpile thin. Your father mutters something and leaves to fetch more, but you know he's angry. Not at you, but at the unfairness of it. Firewood burned too fast last week, and the forest too frozen now for easy chopping. Every sick day is a log you didn't plan to burn. Every fever is a threat to the whole household. Because let's be honest, illness doesn't stay where it starts. If you're sick, odds are someone else will be too by week's end. There's no isolating in a one-room hut. No spare space, no sick bed. You'll sleep beside the same people, breathe the same air, share the same blankets. One illness can crawl through a household like a rat in the walls. There's a murky little historical fact about this. Some medieval villagers believed that illness was carried by spirits, demons that drifted through open windows and doors. That's why some people seal their homes with herbs, ash and blessed water in the dead of winter, even though it also meant trapping in the cold and the smoke. Better to breathe a little soot than let death in through a crack. The priest says sickness is God's judgment. Your mother says it's just the season. Your sister says it's bad luck. You say nothing. You just lie back near the fire, wrapped in every piece of cloth in the house, your breath shallow, your cough echoing through the rafters, and sleep? Forget it. Your body won't allow it. You drift, yes, in and out of half-dreams, sweat clinging to your neck, throat raw, limbs buzzing with that strange fevered heat that feels like fire from the inside out. You hallucinate someone walking across the room, but no one's moving. You think you hear your name whispered, but everyone's asleep, or pretending to be, because that's the thing. They're afraid too. No one says it, but you feel it in the distance they keep, in the way your sister won't take her usual spot next to you tonight. You don't blame her, you'd do the same. Still, your mother stays close. She dabs your forehead with damp cloth, feeds you spoonfuls of thin broth, hums softly when the coughing fits come. She's seen this before. She's done this before. She's buried 2 babies once upon a time and helped a neighbour survive a whole winter with a broken leg and nothing but willow bark for the pain. If anyone can pull you through, it's her. But not even she can stop the night from coming on strong and endless. You lie there, wrapped and sweating, eyes half closed. The fire pops softly. A cold draft snakes across the floor. Your head spins with the heat. Your thoughts flit in and out like birds in the rafters. And you realise something deeply unfunny. You could survive wolves. You could survive hunger. You could survive the endless cold of a peasant winter. But one small fever could undo all of it. One tiny, invisible enemy. One cough carried on the air. You remember a story, half forgotten, about a village where winter sickness took 10 people in a single week. They burned the beds, scrubbed the walls, hung charms from the doors, and still, the coughing kept echoing through the night. They said it was cursed. They always say it's cursed, but maybe it's just life, peasant life. You walk the edge all season. One bad step and you fall. Still you breathe, ragged, shallow, but breathing. Your mother presses a warm cloth to your chest. The dog whines softly, curled nearby. The fire holds, flickering stubbornly against the dark, and so do you. By morning, the fever breaks. Not all at once. Not like a curtain rising to reveal sunshine and blue skies and a choir of angels. No, more like a slow ebb, like floodwaters grudgingly retreating from a field. You wake drenched in sweat, your blanket stuck to your back, the collar of your shirt cold and soaked. But you're breathing deeper now. The coughing still comes in short fits, but your chest doesn't feel like it's been filled with wet stones. You ache, deep, aching, every joint, every rib. But you're here. Your mother is asleep sitting up, chin tucked into her chest, her hand still resting on your leg like she meant to stay awake all night, but lost the battle somewhere near dawn. There's a half-empty bowl of broth on the floor, a rag across your forehead that's gone cold. The fire is down to its bones, just red lines under white ash, but the room is warm somehow. Not just in temperature, but in feeling. You're alive. You don't know how close it came. Maybe not close at all. Or maybe just a few more degrees in the wrong direction. That's the terrifying thing. There's no real line. No moment where anyone says, now they're safe. You just endure. You outlast the worst of it, and then you wait to see what's left standing. Your mother wakes slowly, blinking at you. She touches your face and nods. Says nothing. There's no dramatic reunion. No weeping, just quiet relief. The kind of relief that has no words left. She stands, stretches, checks the fire, tosses on a few sticks. The day has already begun, and there's no pause just because one child was nearly flattened by the season. And you're useless for most of it. You lie on your back or sit slumped in the warmest spot you can find, wrapped in every layer available, sipping water and broth, sweating and then shivering, dozing off and waking again. You're weak, unsteady. When you try to stand later that morning, your legs wobble and buckle like overcooked reeds. Your sister catches your arm before you topple. You hate the look in her eyes, not fear but worry. You never want to be the person others have to worry about. They let you rest. You don't argue. Your father leaves a hand on your shoulder before heading out to check the traps. Your sister, who usually scowls when asked to share anything, gives you her chunk of bread without a word. Even the dog seems gentler today, curling near your feet like he knows something happened. Like he's standing guard. Your dreams are quieter now, but odd. You drift in and out of sleep all day, and every time you close your eyes you're somewhere else. Sometimes it's summer, and you're knee-deep in a stream. Sometimes it's harvest time, your hands full of warm grain. Once you dream of fire, bright and furious, and a voice saying something in a language you don't recognize. When you wake, your skin is cold, and you've bitten your lip hard enough to taste iron. Sickness dreams are strange. You know that. Everyone says so. They carry the scent of whatever fever burns through your blood. In some villages, dreams during illness are considered omens. People have tried to read futures in them. Wars predicted, deaths anticipated. Your grandmother used to claim she dreamed of wolves 3 nights in a row before your uncle died. Your mother never confirmed it, but she didn't deny it either. By afternoon, you feel clearer, not strong, but present. You sit near the fire, blanket around your shoulders, hands wrapped around a warm cup of broth. Your muscles are sore, but it's a good kind of sore, like your body's beginning to remember what living feels like. Outside, the snow is falling again. Thick and slow, the kind of snow that mutes sound and turns the world into a blur of white and grey. You watch it through the small grease paper window, the flakes catching and tumbling, stacking silently on the sill. It's beautiful, and for the first time in days, you can appreciate it without the heavy press of dread in your chest. You start to notice things again. The rhythm of the spoon in the pot, the way the fire flares when your brother tosses on pine bark, the baby's little hiccuping giggle when he's tickled, the way your sister sings under her breath while she works, even though she always denies it when you bring it up. The world is still cold, still harsh, but for a few hours it softens. A strange fact. Some medieval households believed that when a person recovered from illness, they were vulnerable to spirits. that their soul had wandered during fever and might not return fully unless welcomed back properly. This gave rise to rituals: burning juniper, washing the face in melted snow, drinking broth laced with honey and salt. In your home, the ritual is simpler: a little extra food, a warm blanket, a nod from your father that says, "You made it." No smoke or chanting needed. And yet, you can't shake the feeling that something did wander. You feel different now, not like you've gained some wisdom or had a spiritual awakening. Just more aware. You are face to face with the edge, even if just for a moment, and now everything feels a little sharper. The fire crackles more clearly. The chill in your feet is more distinct. The smell of onions and smoke and wool is stronger, more real. Maybe that's what illness does in winter. It strips you down, takes you to the base layer of yourself and forces you to rebuild. You rest again that night, not in the way you usually do, folded in exhaustion like bread dough, but softer. Your body's not desperate, just tired in the quiet way that asks for sleep instead of demanding it. You settle into the blankets, and this time your sister lies close again, shoulder against yours, no distance between you. Even the pig is nearer to the hearth tonight, as if everyone's pulled in tighter instinctively, now that the danger's past. You close your eyes. No strange dreams tonight, just fire, and breath, and the feeling of one more day won. You wake up hungry, and not the usual gnawing, dull ache that's always somewhere in your belly this time of year. This is sharper, deeper, almost luxurious in its clarity. After days of sickness, days of sipping broth and nibbling bread like a mouse with a bad attitude, your stomach is back online and it wants everything. Porridge, apples, a chicken leg, an entire cheese wheel. You'd even consider that terrible pickled turnip from the feast, which says something. Of course, hunger and having food are two very different things. You glance at the shelf above the hearth. A couple onions, a few wrinkled apples, more bruised than fruit, a sack of flour that's mostly hope at this point. The pig's still alive, bless her, and the chickens haven't frozen yet, though they look like they're trying. But meat, eggs, those are reserved for celebration or desperation. You're not quite at either, yet. Still, your mother notices the look in your eyes as you sit up. She smiles just a little, that tight, tired smile she wears when something good happens, but the world's still too hard to allow much celebration. She hands you a bowl of something warm, thicker than broth, filled with bits of root vegetable, grain, and a few shreds of meat that make your eyes widen. Rabbit, maybe, or pigeon, or something you're not supposed to ask about. You eat slowly, savouring every bite. It tastes incredible. Not because it is, but because it's real. It's warm. It fills you. Your father comes in from outside, stamping the snow from his boots. "She's back," he says with a nod toward you. That's the whole conversation. That's enough. Your sister gives you a small shove on the shoulder like you've just come home from war. The baby laughs when you make a face at him. Even the dog seems pleased, nosing at your empty bowl. Recovery here isn't some dramatic affair. No speeches, no soft beds and special diets. You just get back up and start again, and that's what you do today. Slowly, stiffly, but you do it. You help sweep the floor, which is mostly just rearranging dirt. You help amend a torn cloak, even though your stitches are lumpy and crooked. You go out to check the traps with your father, trudging through snow that's crusted over again. The sky overhead pale and heavy, like it's been drained of colour. There's a rabbit in the snare, small but fat enough to be a blessing. Your father lifts it without ceremony and ties it to his belt. You don't say much, just walk beside him, the cold air biting at your nose, your breath puffing out like steam. But there's a rhythm to it, and it feels good to be moving again, to be useful. On the way back, you pass by the little chapel, half buried in snow, its crooked bell tower leaning like it's tired of holding up the sky. There's no service today, but you poke your head inside anyway. It smells like candle wax and frozen stone. There are old icons on the walls, faded saints with wide eyes and chipped halos, and someone's left a withered bunch of herbs on the altar. A prayer, probably, or a trade. You sit for a moment on one of the rough benches, fingers tucked into your sleeves, and just breathe. You don't think of yourself as particularly devout. You say the prayers, you cross yourself. But moments like this make you wonder. Not about miracles necessarily, but about endurance, about the quiet strength it takes to keep going. Maybe faith is just that, showing up, surviving. Outside, your father waits. You rejoin him, and the two of you walk home in silence. When you get there, your mother's already gutting the rabbit, steam rising from the pot where bones will soon become broth. The baby's trying to chew on a chunk of firewood. Your sister is singing again, openly this time, and the whole house smells like meat and smoke and life. Later that evening, you sit near the hearth with your feet propped close to the flames. You're sore, tired, but not sick. Not anymore. The fire is burning bright tonight. Stronger than usual. Your father chopped extra wood today. No one says it, but everyone knows why. A small celebration in the only currency you have. Warmth. You think again about the strange line you walk this week. The line between fever and recovery. Between being here and being a name whispered in the past tense. It's thinner than you realized, more fragile. One bad night, one missed fire, one hungry day too many. But you didn't fall, and now everything feels sweeter. The crackle of the fire, the weight of the blanket, the smell of rabbit stew, even the rough floor under your feet feels like something you're lucky to be standing on. Another odd bit of medieval thinking. Some believed that surviving an illness meant you were marked by God. Not chosen, necessarily, but noted, that something passed through you and left a shadow behind. Some even thought survivors could carry healing in their hands for others, laying them gently on the sick to pass on the blessing. You don't believe that. Not really. But your mother holds your hand a little longer when she passes you your bowl. Your sister leans her head on your shoulder without speaking. Maybe there's something to it. That night sleep comes easier. Your body's still rebuilding, still stiff in places, but it feels more like yours again. You curl up under the cloak and close your eyes, listening to the fire crackle, the baby's soft breaths, your family shifting in their sleep. You dream of warmth, not fire, but sun. A golden afternoon, wheat in the fields, bees buzzing lazily around a tree in bloom. No snow, no coughing, just light and the rustle of a wind in green leaves. And when you wake in the night, as you always do, it's not from fear, not from fever. You just roll over, pull the blanket higher, and fall back into sleep like stepping into calm water. You've earned it. Winter doesn't end in one dramatic moment. There's no official line, no trumpet blast to announce that the worst is over. It retreats like a sullen animal, backwards slow, refusing to admit defeat. The cold still comes every night. Still, wakes you with stiff fingers and breath that clouds in the air. But now, some mornings, when you step outside, you hear water dripping from the eaves. You see the snow sinking into itself. And one morning, you catch a patch of brown earth near the path. Muddy, soft, ugly, and beautiful all at once. That's how you know, not from warmth, from change. Today your hands don't hurt quite as much when you dip them into the water bucket. The wind doesn't cut quite so sharp across your cheeks. The days, while still short, seem just a little longer than last week. You can feel your body stretching again. Less bundled, less clenched. Your muscles are remembering what it's like to move without bracing for pain. You pull on your boots, still cracked, still patched, and go out to chop wood. There's no end to the work, but it feels different now. Not desperate, just steady. You swing the axe into the log and watch it split cleanly. Steam curls up from the exposed grain. You do it again, and again. The rhythm fills your arms, your back, your chest. It's not pleasant, but it's familiar. You know this work. It doesn't scare you. Later, you help your father dig out the goat pen. The snow is melting faster there, revealing old straw and frozen dung and the mess of survival. You shovel it aside, toss in new bedding, check the roof. The goat's fur is thick, and she eyes you like she knows something you don't. You mutter to her under your breath. She grunts. It's practically a conversation. Inside, your mother is stirring a pot of something that smells like spring. Onions, maybe, or leeks from the cellar. There's a sharp green scent that cuts through the smoke, and for the first time in months, the house doesn't smell like just wood and bodies. Your sister is sewing again, repairing the blanket that's been torn and restitched so many times it's more patch than fabric. The baby is crawling now, or trying, dragging himself across the floor with a look of determination only small children and truly drunk men ever wear. It's not joy that fills the house, not yet. But it's a kind of lightness, a lifting, like everyone is carrying the same heavy stone, and now it's just a little bit smaller. You sit near the hearth and watch the fire, not because you're cold, but out of habit. The fire has been your clock, your anchor, your only real luxury all winter. You can't imagine life without it now. Even when the days get warmer, it will still burn every night, still glow in the dark. A flickering companion, a strange historical tidbit. In some communities, when winter ended, they buried their hearth ashes, a symbolic death, a ritual to mark the turning. They'd sweep out the old fire, dig a shallow pit, and pour the cold ashes into the earth, thanking the flame for its service and asking for a fruitful year ahead. You're not sure if your village does that, but the idea sticks with you, saying goodbye to the fire that kept you alive. Strange, but beautiful. Because it did keep you alive. Not just the flames themselves, but everything around it. The people, the shared body heat, the overlapping snores and shifting blankets, the dog curled against your feet, the pig snuffling in her sleep, the broth that tasted like bark and onion skins, the rhythm, the ritual, the survival. Winter didn't win. You did. It's tempting to look back and think you barely made it, that the sickness nearly pulled you under, that the cold nearly broke you, and maybe that's true. But here you are, feet on the dirt floor, smoke in your nose, strength in your arms, fire at your side. There's still risk, of course, always is. A late snow could come, the thaw could flood the stream. Food's still scarce, but you're not hollow anymore, not crumbling. You're rebuilding. Each day a brick, each night a beam. As the sun begins to set, you go outside again, drawn by something more than duty. The sky is streaked with orange and purple, and the snow under your feet has started to glitter in a new way. Not ice glitter, light glitter. Reflection. Warmth. You stand there for a moment, breathing in the cold, and it is still cold, but not dead, not oppressive, just there, a fading guest. Your neighbour passes by, nods. Won't be long now, he says. His breath comes in clouds, but his eyes are clear. You nod back. Back inside, your family is gathering for the evening. Not huddled, just sitting close. The fire crackles, but it's not the centre of the world tonight. It's just part of it. You sit down, pull the blanket over your legs, and lean against your sister's shoulder. She doesn't shove you away. Outside, the wind rattles the shutters, but it sounds half-hearted, like it knows it's losing its grip. You close your eyes, not out of exhaustion this time, but peace. A rare, still moment. And when sleep comes, it comes easy. Not afraid, not sick, just tired and alive. So now, as the fire dims to embers and the cold outside takes one last breath before slinking away into memory, you're left with something quietly miraculous. You made it through the winter. Not just any winter, a medieval peasant winter. The kind that doesn't care if you're tired, doesn't wait if you're sick, and never apologises for taking too much from those who already had so little. But you endured. Through the endless dark nights, the frostbitten mornings, the meals that barely qualified as meals, through cracked hands and sleepless hours, through sickness and silence and the thick, heavy presence of a cold that didn't just cling to your skin, it settled into your bones and waited there, patient as death. And still, you got up, you fed the fire, you shared your blanket, you chopped the wood, mended the hole, stirred the pot, soothed the baby. You survived. That's the true story of this winter. Not heroism, not conquest, not some grand noble tale. Just small stubborn acts of staying alive, of leaning against each other when there was nothing else left to lean on, of believing, even if only faintly, that spring would come, because it always does. The ice will melt, the fields will wake, the sun will stretch its limbs and remember how to stay above the horizon. You'll trade the heavy cloak for bare feet on warm earth. You'll hear birdsong instead of coughing. You'll sleep with the window cracked and not wake up afraid. And when the next winter comes, as it always will, you'll remember this one. The fire, the dark, the way you learned to see with your hands and speak with your silence. The way your breath fogged in the air and proved over and over that you were still here. So now, if you're still awake, let the last bit of cold slip away. Let the fire in your imagination burn low but steady. You've done enough for one night. You've earned your rest. Sleep well, traveller. Tomorrow the sun will rise.